Jessica Simpson, she's a personality actress, you know? She's an entertainer. And this role was tailored for her, where she gets to play, she said, for your housewarming party, I'll get you towels. And she hasn't got me towels yet.
You know, as actors. But when the movie blew up as it did, we're going...
I would say that even after having to do a panel and we were signing autographs for hours, there was still a huge line. And for me, being able to sign as many autographs as possible, whatever they wanted, because it's Comic-Con is diehard grateful of having to see that. You know, because you're thinking, wow, this movie came out 7 years ago? And to know the fact that we're going to be a part of, not only are we animated in the Napoleon Dynamite, the animated series, but it's part of animation domination.
Yeah.
You're going, we're in good hands. Comic-Con itself, I remember John Heater having to talk about how he was, after the panel, he was going to walk the Comic-Con, and he got bombarded. He thought that was a steampunk. Another time, I was like Day of the Dead. I painted my face. People were bumping into me going, hey, get out of the way, punk. Which is Comic-Con behavior. You know, I just felt bad for those people who are in those suits because, yeah, as a matter of fact, I would like to see my character cross over to The Simpsons, and then over to, I did an episode of American Dad, actually. I played one of the girls' boyfriends. So, and you know, Seth and the whole gang, I mean, everybody, even with the Fox family. So, you know, I always worry about other studios because I know they want to get to the animations, domination kind of. I'm in all the episodes, and I think one of my favorites, I would say, well, there's two of them. There's Thundercone, where you get to see Napoleon's fighting skills and how we go about that, and then there's the other one where it becomes Liger Town, where all the, animals can talk, ghosts can happen, people can blow up, my head can blow up, and it's okay.
I love you. I really did. And I said, and I remember when you said, I'm not going to vote. You know what? I understand. But here's my reason. When I was up on stage and rapping, and then some of the lyrics had a lot of bad words, and the studios kept on telling me,
Starving Artist Project, right? SAP. And he explained to me about what it was about and how he wanted to start it up. And it reminded me of how that could help guide me into the direction I was going. You know, I think for anybody who's starting, if they could have something out there that could give them some proper guidance to, I have some knowledge, and with that knowledge I take on and move forward into my own endeavors. But for somebody who's starting out, whether you're a painter, a musician, or an actor, or director, or writer, or anything that has to do with the arts, that there are people there, you know, that care about the art. Sometimes it could be a lonely road, you know, but you need somebody who can say, you know what, keep doing it. This is the right direction. Specific tools to get you from point A to point B. So something like the SAP.
We're here at Fan Expo 2014 or 3014 for you guys who are definite geeks out. Well, I was riding a mule at the time through the Grand Canyon, and then I met this guy with big glasses and a big fro. No. I was working on 2 TV shows at the time. Who would have known that a small film like that could blow up so big? And when you go to the events, for instance, something like this, and being able to see not only the action figures, but you see the plush dolls and the bobbleheads. I mean, from the t-shirts, the Bobo Pedro, the hats, the wristbands.
Well, I'm actually working on a show called Eastbound and Down for HBO with Danny McBride and Stephen Little and Will Ferrell. So, but I'm here actually to support the Cinesol Film Festival. I got one of the films called Pants on Center. That's right, that's actually right. And there's actually several other films. They got a film from Argentina that's going to be airing tonight. And then there's several workshops. There's a workshop that's being done by Arlene, who's actually in Grey's Anatomy, where she talks about making it in Hollywood. And for those of you guys who are really interested in being in the business, I think it's a great to not only hear it from an actress, but to hear her perspective, because I believe she's from this town, from the glam life and the Hollywood life where you want to talk about going to the parties and meeting directors, and that's great. But the truth is, it starts off in your college, or it starts off with community, where you do short films to independent films and go on to making big feature films. But it's a quality of work, and a lot of people think about just writing something and throwing it. Do that. I think it's really sitting down with great mentors who understand the business and understand the art. And if you put those two together and really create something great, then it will be big. I could put my soul into that. because that's what you gotta say, if you vote for me, all of your wildest dreams will come true. But you gotta say it with a, you gotta raise it one octave. So one of my nerdy geekathons is the fact that I am truly a big fan.
That's it, but I'm no secret, man. I just like to keep it real and
besides, it's a comedy, and many people of all generations could sit down, watch, and enjoy. You just like the Impact Awards. You would hope that any work you do will.
With this, with her next door neighbour called Pig, otherwise known as Darren, when the two of them get together, they've spent their whole lives together. They've never really grown up. They're just like kids, really excited. They do the same things they've always done. They don't let the outside world in. They're just in their own little world and completely unaware of anything else that's going on. There's a lot of energy to both of them. You know, if it's getting too out of hand, she's always the one to bring them back down. Because Pig's is a bit more mad than she is, but he never gets to express that because she's always there to bring him back to kind of reality in a way. She's also a lot deeper than him, like more in touch with her feelings, and that he's just, you know, everything's just kind of black and white. So it's kind of hard to talk about the characters separate because they're so close together, do you know what I mean? You have to talk about kind of routine. They play the same games, they have these role plays that they play the whole time. We're just like the games that kids would play. We're like, we play that game again, yeah, okay, and they're into the game, you know, and you grow out of that as you get of their world, like, and when they get to the palace, it's going to be amazing. They'll be king and queen of their world. So I think that Runt knows she will get to the palace eventually. I just found it really strange, but then after that I got into it and just completely fell in love with it. And I'm a complete sucker for it. There's a big difference to this one. The base of it is a complete love story. It gets very dark and it gets really interesting in that way, and because it reflects a lot of relationships in the sense that, you know, when you first meet someone, your relationship keeps growing and growing, whatever relationship it is, like, especially like with the boy-girl one. And when you get past a certain stage, if you're not prepared to keep changing with the relationship, if one person stays the same, you know what I mean, if they don't change together, it's going to end. One person might want what the other one doesn't, and that happens all the time. And as well, because it's so intense and it is unhealthy, because they haven't developed properly. You can see her even when she's reading back over, you know, with the sides, you know, for doing a scene, and she's kind of thinking of maybe to add something else to it. And, do you know what I mean? Living it. I don't think it's a matter of age. It's just a matter of understanding it. I don't know, once you can feel the story, like, because a lot of people would read it and just not get it at all because of the way it's written, and then, like, you need to see it performed, whereas other people...
John Wakefield went on a killing rampage and killed 6 people, and her mom was one of the 6. So her relationship with her dad diminishes, and he sends her to LA to her grandmother's, and she hasn't tried to get on top of it all, and she has run away from a lot of things. The relationship with her dad, she hasn't spoken to him in all that time. So, I mean, I think it is maybe how the characters interact, and then how the events kind of turn out and how they react to those events, then that kind of came. Well, yeah, that's when then people can do pools and decide who they think the killer is and why. And I mean, the amount of conversations we had, because, well, I mean, you know, it depends. I think different people will get different things from it, and I think they throw a lot of things out there at the beginning to make you kind of confused as to what's going on. But yeah, I mean, you know, we'd get a script and then we'd be eager for the next one, and we're like, I suppose it's most similar to reality shows, you know what I mean? Because it was originally pitched as that, and it's and the way it was shot, you know, everything was.
TV.com. I'm Elaine Cassidy, and I play Lucy Honeychurch in Slavish. She's quite, yeah, experimental. I suppose, yeah, Lucy, she comes from a family.
John Wakefield, and she hasn't been back to the island in that time. So the only thing that brings her back is her friendship for Henry. There's no way she's going to miss that wedding. So that shows how strong they're both. So she has to face a lot of past issues that she hasn't dealt with, that she's kind of run away from.
I think she should know exactly what's going on and where we are in the story, to just take each situation as it happens. And when people are talking, it's like, I understand what's going on, but Lydia doesn't. So just to go, hold on, I don't like when they talk about all this, because it confuses me, and it reminds me that they'll say, you know, that he's pleased, and that's, as far as I'm concerned, my job is to please him, because they've got quite a good attention span. But
to be honest, I don't know what to expect. I think pleasantly surprised and entertained. And
Angela Raubel, otherwise known as Gelly, she's Adolf's half niece, because her mom is his half. You know, if they walked into a restaurant and everyone would stop and stare, and I think she quite enjoyed that. So in the beginning of their relationship, it was a lot of fun, a lot of excitement, living with her famous uncle, you know, and coming from a poor family. So she got spending time with that character. So I got to know Gelly really well, and every day spent time with her. It may sound a bit freaky, but so just because she's so full of life, and it was just it was just like being around sunshine every day. It was just so refreshing to be around her. But then towards the end of filming, we had quite difficult scenes to do, Ken and myself, and they got quite intense. And for the first time ever, I wanted to escape a character. You know, you couldn't just sight read them and just go, oh yeah, it's an easy scene. They had to be quite well worked. But with Nick, the director, who's absolutely brilliant, and with Ken, it just, you know, we'd block the scene, and then because he's just so brilliant, the scene would kind of move to another level in such a short space of time, so slight. And I suppose you could just read it, you know, once read it one way, and then another time read it another way. And Nick was brilliant because he pinpointed moments, and we tried it a few different ways. And so in each scene, you felt much about her great-grandmother. I mean, about her mother. The only kind of role model of a woman that she has is her great-grandmother. So I think that's why she's so naive and innocent and a bit kind of backwards. She's never kissed a boy, and, like, you know, her friends have, but she hasn't. And it's because the only woman she has is 2 generations older than her, like. And when she meets Johnny, it's a different story. But so when he goes away, she finds out she's pregnant 4 months later and tells her dad. And her dad, like, he loves her so much, but he's so annoyed that you know, it's against her religion and all that. So she kind of feels that she has to go and find Johnny to make everything okay. And she goes over to Birmingham to find him, but it's harder than what she thinks, because she takes everyone on face value. Also, when she tells him that she's pregnant, and, you know, wishing that maybe her father had reacted like that instead. So it's kind of like she's seen the bits of her father in him, that her father, he's not bad to her, you know what I mean? He just has his way of bringing her up. But so then I was kind of getting myself into the frame of mind of her, because she's quite different to me. And, you know, if I had an idea I wanted to change, you know, just say, you know, he'll listen. It's not just like, okay, this is the way we're going and we're not changing for anyone. You know, he'll completely open-minded, and he'll think about it and say, okay, well, actually, if he disagrees, he'll just say, look, I don't think so. Or if he agrees, he might just say, oh yeah, actually, maybe you're right. So it's really easy to work with him. And as well, he wants something more, so he'll just say a few keywords, and then it gets you back on track, kind of. And he's really good.
Impressions of BBC Worldwide Showcases. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty big. I've seen all the pods downstairs, and it's really impressive. I've not heard of it before. I can't believe it's been going 37 years, so I imagine after 37 years, it's pretty perfected by now. And yeah, like, must be a really interesting journey for the people that are here for the 3 days, and, you know, they can just explore every single avenue that they want to. So it's a great, should be international, you know, when someone has a story to tell. It's universal generally, and it is interesting to think that your voice might be dubbed, you know, and I've listened to it before when I was on a plane once, and there was a film that I'd done, and I got to hear myself in a few different languages, which was really impressive, but then I realised I couldn't speak those languages, so that was kind of a bit of a shame. I could always learn the language, but it might take too long. But yeah, no, I think it's great that, you know, drama that's made here, and why not let the world see it? So to come to this event to showcase the great drama that the BBC do, because they've been doing it for a hell of a long time, and it's great that other countries have the opportunity to purchase it. And then
Otherwise known as Gelly. She's Adolf's half-niece, because her mom is his half. Everyone would stop and stare, and I think she quite enjoyed that. So in the beginning of their relationship, it was a lot of fun, a lot of excitement, living with her famous uncle, you know, and coming from a poor family. So she got spending time with that character. So I got to know Gelly really well, and every day spent time with her. It may sound a bit freaky, but so just because she's so full of life, and it was just it was just like being around sunshine every day. It was just so refreshing to be around her. But then towards the end of filming, we had quite difficult scenes to do, Ken and myself, and they got quite intense. And for the first time ever, I wanted to escape a character. You know, you couldn't just sight read them and just go, oh yeah, it's an easy scene. They had to be quite well worked, but with Nick, the director, who's absolutely brilliant, and with Ken, it just, you know, we'd block the scene, and then because he's just so brilliant, it just, the scene would kind of move to another level in such a short space of time, so slight. And I suppose you could just read it, you know, once read it one way, and then another time read it another way. And Nick was brilliant because he pinpointed moments, and we tried it a few different ways. And so in each scene, you felt like you were doing a work.
Okay, so it was created by, written by, starring, executive produced by, directed some, wrote some of the music, all by Dennis Lee. So I play his love interest and his backup singer and percussionist. So he, back in the day when this was happening, there were 4 of us living together, 3 women and Dennis's character, Johnny Rock.
For sure.
And then, you know, now present day, he has a daughter show up that none of us knew he had, and she wants to be famous, and we're like, yeah, right, let's just...
She has money.
So she has money.
Yeah.
And then it turns out she's actually uber talented. Dennis is he's such a sport about really just the self-deprecation and what he puts himself through. Well, he describes it as he created the show based on some guys who didn't quite make it.
Gotcha.
You know, and thought that that was sort of more interesting.
Yeah.
And that side of it. So there are people in the show whose characters did make it, and then, but he didn't. So it's that, you know, Monday morning armchair. And even more than that, I think it's relatable to anybody who has a family of any kind. You know, I mean, if you're a human, you come from some form of dysfunction.
Of course.
And that's really what this show is about, is kind of one big dysfunction.
My function is really like to help protect him, usually from himself. But really, like, he goes off the cliff, I'm going off. Gillies, who plays Dennis's daughter on the show, and and everybody's playing live instruments, and we are sex and drugs and rock and roll. But I think I'm going to be here in Los Angeles. I'll be in New York the days before for the premiere and press and whatnot, but I think I'm going to come back here and have just a little gap.
Because we're so comfortable with each other, and I think actually in our own weird way we're very much in love. So in Hollywood, and then that changed it, and I started focusing in acting, and now you know, I like to think of myself anyway as a good, happy person who likes to help others and be positive, and so I get to really exercise that shadow side of myself, who's not so... Yes, well, my organization is the Pet Matchmaker, and we inspire and celebrate rescue, foster, and adoption of homeless animals. I mean, there's so many parts to that were just disturbing, from the alleged killer luring him out of a protected area, to what they did to the lion. Yes, this Saturday, 6 o'clock, kittybungalow.org. Take it from somebody who got their molars very early in life. Being in love is a fantastic mystery that takes a young and beautiful is not a crime, you know. And for your 411, I adore your father. Hate to break it to you, Angel, but you are no longer the only girl in Nick Parker's life.
Well, I'm on the host committee for Stars for Stripes, and I'm a big animal advocate, so I'm right at home with this. I've worked with Katie Fur, and then a documentary that she has in the works, and then I am on the board of several. And I know that's not the most appetizing soundbite here, but it's Katie's project, and I don't know where things are, with it. I just know that I was one of several experts that she interviewed about sort of animal rights and what's happening with them, and particularly with Spain. Oh my gosh, a lot. Okay, so I have a Christmas movie coming out called Anything But Christmas, and then right after that I'll be Scott Baio's ex-wife on his new show, See Dad Run. But my pet project, no pun, or every pun intended really, I'm launching a new animal project called The Pet Matchmaker, and we launch in January. It's a multimedia project. It's a huge project, so I'll be getting the word out about that.
Can they go?
I think the best place right now is to come to me. Twitter, Elaine, the number 4 animals, and then my website, ElaineHendricks.com.
The motion capture actress for Alex Wesker in Resident Evil Revelations 2. And I was hired for a video game. And actually, I didn't even know what the game was. And I went in and I had to do all these wardrobe fittings, and I had no idea what the game was. And it wasn't until this 2015 that I started getting messages and started seeing images of Alex Wesker 360. And then they put all these different probes on me. I have been a big fan of the original, and I think it's a really neat story. I was first introduced to the series when I was filming in Australia. I was doing a Walt Disney movie called Inspector Gadget 2 there, and some castmates and I were just hanging out, of course seeing the movies and whatnot. But then when the Revelations came up, I actually haven't played it yet. I haven't seen it in its entirety. I've been getting all kinds of messages though, and seeing fan art a lot from. I think it's really cool to be a part of this franchise, and I'm super, I thought it was really cool, and I think they did a great job of capturing me. I've seen some playing an evil character, playing a game that involved, a certain level of violence, but again, I didn't know what game it was when they hired me. It was all top secret. So they didn't tell me a whole lot, but I just knew that it was going to be Eve. I thought it was really fascinating. I thought it was a lot of fun, and the fans have been incredible. I would also love.
Thank you. I'm a big believer. My acting style is bringing physicality. I'm a classically trained dancer, and so that's just what I do for every role, and that ends up. This is the type of film that, as an actor, if I saw on the screen, I'd be like, gosh, near and dear to my heart right now is my own animal rescue organization that I'm a founding member of called Animal Rescue Corps, and we do large-scale rescues like puppy mills, hoarding, dog sled dog. Animal rescue organization that I'm a founding member of called Animal Rescue Corps. That's taking up a lot of time, but it's so worth it. I love every single second.
Really? Wait a minute, did Dennis say? Because Dennis and my character, we're all about sex. Right. But he said, I'm so excited for you to meet them. I play Ava, Johnny Rock, played by Dennis, his longtime girlfriend and backup singer, and we've had a wild ride together. We've done everything, seen everything, and then some. And along the way, I have stuck with him no matter how dysfunctional he gets, and it's real love. It's true love, and I do everything I can to protect. It was pretty kick-ass when we were at the Irving Palace or Irving Plaza. For you? Long weekend. Irving Plaza, or the Apollo, all these places. Family, and a very dysfunctional family, but a family. And let's face it, if you're a human, you understand dysfunction on some level. So I think there's going to be something in there that everybody can relate to. And it's Ava's. That's her thing. She committed to the rock and roll life. It's through and through. So they are committed to each other. They've seen everything. You're going to get to see that really she wanted a family all these years, despite all the drugs and the sex and the rock and roll. She wanted a family, and now she gets to have that when Johnny Rock has a daughter who shows up that they never knew he had. And then there's also a really fun, spoiler alert that I'm not going to give in the very final episode, that when I read it, when I saw the script, that tracks, but then once we got going, the guys, John Corbett already knew how to play the guitar. John Ailes, who plays bass, he learned how to play the bass. And then Robert Kelly, who plays drums, he learned how to play the drums. So by the end of our 10 shows for this first season, everybody was playing. I just did a lot of research on rock and roll. I did a lot of research on drugs that she probably would have done anything other than prescription drugs that I've needed for various, surgery or whatever. But yeah, no, I've not. But I'm very pro marijuana actually. But yet I've never smoked marijuana. Friendship and loyalty, and so it's Rescue Me, which Dennis did years ago and had such huge success with. It was a 1-hour drama with comedic elements, and now we're doing a half-hour comedy with some dramatic elements to it. So it is very, very funny. Dennis threw it all away. He would give us a script and then say, come in, and he was going on at all times, and so it was very messy and raw. And I think that's what Joan Jett is coming to our set to do a scene, and she was awesome. She's just a cool chick. And she played herself, but it did involve some acting, and so she was great, and she was game. And most, it's Dennis Leary. I think that's kind of what all of us were drawn to. I mean, he's so specific in his style. He's so successful, and he's just a great guy. He's a really great guy to work for. And he, over the years, he's knows a lot of people, and he's stayed in touch with a lot of people. So, really kind of, it just involves a phone call for him, and then if someone's available, so of the show, it makes it very specific. It gives it its own deal. Is that particularly the men in the rock industry choose a look and then they stick with it. And so Johnny Rock chose a look and he has stuck in good all the time. And Ava has kept it but given it a more modern touch. So it's fun because even there's no off switch with it. That's I think part of the humor of the show and part of the winking, of the show, and very indicative of the rock and roll world. But really, here's what I think is that, first of all, there's so few roles for women these days, but really strong, great roles where I feel like we get to be smart and funny and sexy and strong. Dennis isn't afraid of that, and he knows how to write for that. So for me, it's a dream come true. And on top of that, get to sing and dance that. It doesn't happen, except for in Sex and Drugs. Good question. First person who pops into my mind who I get likened to frequently, and I take it as a great compliment, would be Charlize. Or intimate, a little loosely, I've now intimately worked with them both, and Liz has said that before, and I don't see it. I just don't see it, and maybe it's because I've worked with them both. Yeah, so I don't know, but that just, it's, I guess, in the eye of the petmatchmaker.com, and we're now expanding into some launching a rescue team, our HEART team, which is the Humane Animal Rescue and Response Team. And I've been an animal activist for a little over a decade now, and so for me, that was just a way that I could channel and funnel all of my activities in the animal world. I still work with organizations all over the world. I have a full-time second career with it because it is my life, it's my passion. Everything I do funnels back to that because I just think animals are the ultimate innocent victims on this planet. And really, it's great for animals, but it's also great for your health because we're really not built to consume as much meat as we do in modern days. So if people knew what was happening to animals, if they really knew and if they really absorbed it, they would make, I believe they would make different choices. And a lot of it's just getting people on the eating front, that somehow it taps into this survival and this fear of survival. No, I have to eat meat to survive. And then it does become a habit, no, I need this. And you actually really don't. You really, really don't. You just need protein, but that protein does not have to come from animal sources. So yeah, and I had another thought, but it went with. Years ago, I made what I call the fortunate mistake of watching an undercover fur video, and it's recently honored at the National Animal Rights Conference with their Guardian Award, and also with a Telly Award for my work on. It's a funny thing getting an award, because it's not really about me, it's about the work, and I just happen to be the greatest dream to merge my work in entertainment and my work with animals, because I believe that we can end animal suffering.
And a lot of like drama inside that comedy, which of course is what makes it funny, because it's just so absurd and so kind of real and in this crazy dysfunctional world. So yeah.
And it's just insanity, and I think everybody just kind of wants to be a part of that. It's like going.
Comes back to her roots because she misses her family and her friends, and she's very close to her brother, and then all this kind of my house, and actually talked me through it, because with it being fixed gears, you know, the pedals keep moving without, so you can't actually stop, so it's terrifying and very hard work, but good, really good fun and a great challenge. So yeah, just a lot of kind of cycling up and down the cycle tracks near my house, and yeah, shining. It was very scary. It was very, very scary to be amongst that, and to see that, you know, the lifestyle that they live. But at the same time, that was kind of what was really exciting about it, and what I love. The relationships that you thought were so solid in the first series are going to get.
But it's a very real journey, I think, as well. I think that's why people can relate to it, because, you know, they care so much. I think when something is so iconically Cornish, you know, I wanted to get it right, so I spent a lot of time with voice. Then everything else is tied in with that. You know, you've got the CGI on top of it, and everything, the simulcam shots of giants grabbing you and stuff, your body's not moving in the right way, or even if the camera's just slightly off, then the whole thing. Young, and she's passionate, and was born into the royal family. She didn't choose the life that comes with it, so and have her own experiences before she takes on that responsibility. You know, she doesn't just want to. He's got an incredible vision, and he's great at kind of sharing that with you. You know, when someone is that kind of inspired, it's amazing to kind of, you really feel that, and it gives you hope, and it makes you trust them, so that you know that you're in the best time working on this. I mean, it was such an experience, a roller coaster from day one. Just any Tom, Dick and Harry, or Roger, or, you know, it's led by Brian. So the movie that we've all achieved together, you know, we became a real team, and I think that we have something that's really cool, and hopefully will be a great film that will be part of a family's life, you know, either for young kids or adults. There is something in like that. It's fantastic. You know, we did a lot of training for the role, so we wanted to be able to do our own stunts to do justice to our characters, because that's part of the twist, particularly for Isabel, is that she is feisty, and she is searching for adventure, so she throws herself at everything. So I loved all of the action. I mean, obviously interacting with giants and being put in the harnesses, so it made it look like the giant had a hold of you, was incredible. And then you're turned upside down and thrown around. I remember my mum came to set, and she was like, I found the scene at the beginning in Jack's house really challenging, because even the dialogue in that scene as well, kind of creating that relationship between Jack and Isabel that is so crucial to the movie, and you only have one scene to do it in, because in the next minute she's taken up the beanstalk. So kind of creating a chemistry between the two of them that was believable, that he would then climb this beanstalk to rescue her, was a challenge. And then also when the beanstalk erupts through the floor, that making that kind of look realistic was reading fairy tales at night is not, I hope it's not a dying breed by any means, but now with, you know, TV, film, iPads, whatever, there is something in a child's imagination.
Pick up sensitively from where you left off, and Ross is being tried, so to deal with. But I think the main thing is real life marriage and this other woman that just won't.
Yeah, well, it's actually really interesting, because last time we were here, the show hadn't aired here, so no one really knew what it was. So I'm kind of excited, you know, to see what people's reaction was to the first season. Well, the great thing about season 2 is that our characters are very much already established. So it's basically working on the relationships that you feel are so solid in season, you know, 1, and then it's exploring that. It's exploring the reality of being married and actually how hard that is. And I think that's what people love about Ross and Demelza, is that their relationship is incredibly real. You know, I think people can relate to it. They shout and they scream at each other. They don't have this perfect relationship. So certainly in season 2, you know, that's really tested. There's jealousy issues. There's, you know, the fact that they have lost their child, and it's getting over that and trying to move on with their lives. So, you know, there's a lot of emotion, and there's also this kind of, you know, incredible roller coaster. There's new characters. There's plot twists. You know, she's fiercely protective of her man, and she'll do absolutely anything for him. You know, there's quite a few scenes where she tries to, you know, save his neck, basically, because he stands up for what he believes in and doesn't necessarily think about the consequences of that and how terrifying that is. I'm halfway through book 6, so yeah, because we do 2 books at a time, and I think at the heart of it, you know, it's the story of an underdog. It's the story of a real romance, and you know, you have these incredibly relatable characters at the heart of it. I think that's what people love about it, and you know, it was such a huge success before, so you know, doing a new adaptation of it was incredibly scary because obviously you want it to be as good as the first. It's been really nice. I mean, I think that the thing to remember is that it is different from the previous series, and it's, you know, it's a new adaptation of the books, and that's been really cool. You know, it's lovely to have. Yeah, I did. I'm not sure why, but I just thought it would be, and being the hero that Ross Poldark is, he managed to...
And standing up to people if you don't agree with them, like not conforming.
This being my first kind of big film, big break, both of them were just so supportive. They were really nice. They kind of took me under their wing. This is a big thing for me. It's a big thing for everyone, but you know, it's my first break. I wanted to make a good impression. I wanted to do everyone in the movie justice, and I wanted to do the character justice because it's not often. That was kind of quite intense, but I loved it. I really embraced the challenge. Well, I think Demelza is a great character for any actress to take on, you know, and they're rare, those great characters. They don't come along that often. But I think that then to progress into Lady of Nampara and A Gentleman's Wife, it's such a great... Yes, very much so, and their relationship is growing the more they get to know each other, but there's still turmoil, you know, right after season 1, and we've just lost our child, so we're dealing with that, and Ross is going to be tried. Season 2 is very exciting and upsetting, and it's a real roller coaster, the whole series. Well, I worked very hard with a fabulous voice coach for weeks before filming, because it was so important to me that we got it right, you know, yeah, I think throughout the series as well, I wanted her to soften the accent. Absolutely, so that's been great to work with. I often say that I work very closely with the costume and makeup people to create this realistic look that changes as we get older.
He with us all.
You know what, he's such a lovely person. He's, I think he's a bit... To be honest, it's just given me so many more opportunities acting-wise, which is lovely. You know, it's great to be a part of a show that's been such a huge success because it really was. But yeah, I mean, at the same time, you've kind of got to contend with the CGI and really selling how terrifying these giants are. So there is a lot of pressure that comes along with it as well. The stuff that they've shot with Bill Nye already, and obviously his stuff was played back to us, and all the motion capture stuff. Hard work, but yeah, I mean, it's amazing. That's when you kind of depend on Brian to kind of talk you through it and to show you previews of what he's planned and what the giants are looking like, how the movement of the scene is going to play out. So you know, we had to create a relationship within a scene right at the beginning of the film. So that was kind of, you know, that was very difficult, and it took us quite a while to kind of find the right balance. Definitely, and it's always exciting now to see where they can go with CGI and special effects. And there's so much now that they couldn't do back in the day. So that's always enticing for audiences. And it's with this being my first kind of big film, big break, both of them were just so supportive. They were really nice. They kind of took me under their wing and made sure that I was okay. And that's you know, this is a big thing for me. It's a big thing for everyone. But you know, it's my first break. I wanted to make a good impression. I wanted to do everyone in the movie justice, and I wanted to do the character justice. It's amazing. That's when you kind of depend on Brian to kind of talk you through it and to show you previews of what he's planned and what the giants are looking like, how the movement of the scene is going to play out. The movie depends on him following her up the beanstalk, so you know, we had to create a relationship with him. Definitely, and it's always exciting now to see where they can go with CGI and special effects. And there's so much now that they couldn't do back in the day. So that's always enticing for audiences, and it's a great family movie. And I think that people love to kind of go to the cinema with their family and watch something that everyone can enjoy. Well, I think Demelza is a great character for any actress to take on, you know, and they're rare, those great characters. They don't come along that often. But I think that then to progress into Lady of Nampara and A Gentleman's Wife, it's such a great... Yes, very much so, and their relationship is growing the more they get to know each other, but there's still turmoil, you know, right after season 1, and we've just lost our child, so we're dealing with that, and Ross is going to be tried. And season 2 is very exciting and upsetting, and it's a real roller coaster, the whole series. Well, I worked very hard with a fabulous voice coach for weeks before filming, because it was so important to me that we got it right, you know, absolutely love it, so we really had to nail that and get that that right, and I hope I did. But it's, yeah, I think throughout the series as well, I wanted her to soften the accent, absolutely. So that's been great to work with. I often say that I work very closely with the costume and makeup people to create this realistic look that changes as we get older.
He with us all.
You know what? He's such a lovely person. He's, I think he's a bit. To be honest, it's just given me so many more opportunities acting-wise, which is lovely. You know, it's great to be a part of a show that's been such a huge success because she'll do absolutely anything for him. You know, there's quite a few scenes where she tries to, you know, save his neck, basically. Over that and trying to move on with their lives. So, you know, there's a lot of emotion and it's exploring the reality of being married and actually how hard that is. And I think that's what people love about.
It really was, but yeah, I mean, at the same time, you've kind of got to contend with the CGI and really selling how terrifying these giants are. So there is a lot of pressure that comes along with it as well. But it was a great team. The pre-stuff that they've shot with, you know, with all the stuff that they've shot with Bill Nye already, and obviously his stuff was played back to us, and all the motion capture stuff.
Her roots, back to her family, to her brother, and yeah, back to the life that she left of being a courier.
To be perfectly honest with you, I'm not entirely sure it's here yet. I've been a different side to me that I've been wanting to kind of express for a while. So it was great, and immediately I was grabbed by the project, something really different, something I could really throw myself into. So with couriers, real couriers, during filming, and it was really interesting to actually speak to them. And I think you would expect there to be much more accidents than there are, but a realistic film. And I think we've managed to grab that. You certainly get
Well, it was a sort of long process, really, and I went for my first audition, and I just read like a series of auditions after that, and then a series of workshops, and then they offered me the part. So it was a long process, but it was thrilling, and sort of the adrenaline you get from it. And I mean, making this movie was so much fun. I mean, I loved absolutely everything. Anything really. I mean, just anything that's classy and that I know that I'm really going to enjoy. Something really get stuck into. I'd quite like to do like an action film which has a bit of sword fighting or something in it, just something that I've not experienced yet.
Really great position where I could kind of pick and choose what I wanted, and I started getting offers to do a lot of kind of big studio movies, and none of the scripts excited me. And I just started looking at different things in the world that were disturbing me, and I'd seen this website where you could go to Thailand and pay $10,000 to walk into a room and shoot somebody in the head. And that idea disturbed me so much, I said, screw this, I'm just going to write, direct, produce, do my own movie, have complete creative favor. And after he saw the movie, he invited me to his house to watch movies. And I think we were watching War of the Gargantuas or Hell Night or some old film. And we started talking about different, you've got to write that right now. So I just ran home, unplugged my phone, shut off my...
Business is changing to such a degree that you're finding that movies are kind of small VOD releases, or it's Marvel. And clearly what audiences are going to and what theaters are booking are Star Wars movies and these kind of event superhero films. So it's certainly, they're a lot of fun. You get a lot of money to play with. I mean, it's interesting. It's a whole other universe that's happening right now. Killer Clowns from Outer Space, and it was fantastic. But yeah, we wanted to make a very disturbing, scary clown movie. And the idea was to create another monster, like Freddy or Jason. But that's really up to the fans. I mean, the filmmakers, you just create the best film you can. But you know, with John, it was his first feature, and he had me there to protect him. So we had a terrific partner in Vertebra Films, this producer named Matt Cappuccino, who I did Aftershock with. He financed both movies. Oh, nice. And they were great. They really, really let us go crazy, and I could really help John and be a creative sounding board for him whenever he needed me. But my job as the producer was to help him develop the script. We really, really spent a long time hammering out the mythology before we made the movie. I said, if the mythology isn't airtight, the movie's not going to work. We can't have like lingering questions we don't address. And we've got to, whatever mythology we create, we have to stick to it. So we really spent a long time on that. And the guys, they're just so talented. I can't say enough great things. It's easy as a producer when you have a filmmaker as talented as John Watts. You can really just kind of sit back and let them do their thing and be there whenever. Of course. I first had the idea to write and direct Cannibal Holocaust, believe what I had just seen, and it was before the internet, so I couldn't just go up and look up information. And I tried to find it in every book, and I actually killed people. And I studied special effects, I'd seen every makeup effect, but I had never seen anything so effective. The filmmaking, the documentary style, and of course the Riz Ortolani music. And that was what began my obsession with the movie, and of course reading about Ruggiero and subsequently realizing that he had directed other movies that I loved as well. But it seemed like he really murdered. Every review ever by anyone, the first thing they talk about is Cannibal Holocaust, Cannibal Holocaust. And the Hollywood Report become, over time, the gold standard for, like, it's like the ultimate outlaw horror movie. There is no closing was going to work. And to really start the movie, I was paying myself and my own money to fly the crew, to go to Peru. And while we were there, like right before shooting was when the financing came together. But I had to say, yes, we're going, yes, we're going. We were fighting the weather. And then we were in the jungle and I started production. And every day I was thinking, today I really need to write Ruggiero and tell him right when I get back in December. But by then the news had gotten out and I felt terribly that you didn't hear it from me first. Cannibal Holocaust is the inspiration, and it's a very different type of story, and the name The Green Inferno. But the idea was that's kind of Ultimo Mondo Cannibale has the finger thing. That you'll see tomorrow night, amongst other things. But really for a modern American audiences, because it couldn't be as strong as Cannibal Holocaust, it's a different story, but you notice in the credits, The World and Cannibal Holocaust, I want people that maybe have never seen it, that are too scared to see it, to watch Green Inferno and then go find Cannibal Holocaust if they haven't.
Okay.
I like Fitzcarraldo. I like the scenes with the natives. When the natives come on the boat, I think it's... But the one where we shot is by Aguirre, The Wrath of God. Because they call it the Pongo Aguirre. And we went far. But the difference, but also, for my untrained eye, the difference, obviously, I think that what makes Cannibal Holocaust unique, that a lot of people don't know, is that everybody knows you were the assistant director to Roberto Rossellini. But not many people know that you are he is writing crime novels and detective stories now, and his crime films are incredible. I mean, you made great crime films as well, but when we think of Lenzi, I think of the Italian crime. And if you look at Cannibal Ferox, and in Cannibal Ferox, they're finding a detective. They keep cutting back to New York, back to these police, but Lenzi loves the detective stories. So I think that instead of...
Every single day, there was no electricity, no running water. These people had not only never seen a movie, there were poisonous snakes and tarantulas. It was the Amazon. It was no joke. It was scary at times, but I'm glad we pushed it and did it, and it's making me a better director. It's actually much easier to direct, at 40 than at 30, and I feel lots of reports of it when we were in Peru too. Crazy stories. It was insane. And once we were in the jungle, we realized there's 1,000 stories in there. It's an amazing place. I mean, cannibalism. It's the last unthinkable thing. They were awesome. I mean, they were villagers. They weren't like people that you'd expect. Like, they weren't like Cannibal Holocaust where they're actually people that live in charts into Peru, because people actually ship real body parts. So we had fake heads and fake arms, and all that stuff got confiscated by customs. And even though it was fake and we explained it was a movie, it was very hard. Like, it was a crazy...
When it's Tarantino directing me, I could turn off that directing hat. I mean, when you're going in as an actor, you know what you're getting into. And I said I wanted to be the dream actor I wish I had. I just fully threw myself into the part. I put on almost 40 pounds of muscle. I went back to Boston, where I grew up, and only talked in my accent and created the role and created the character. And I just became possessed by really, really giving him a say. As long as you don't mention 86, it's fine. But the truth is, we get mad about the Mets in 86, but the painful thing is we're more mad at Bob Stanley and Calvin Schiraldi. I can't hate the Mets the way I hate the Yankees. I just can't.
But a bunch of kids who get a cabin in the woods, they go there to have fun, and they get this flesh-eating disease which rips through their flesh and does horrible things, and they go crazy. And a movie that was both funny and scary, where, like, in the style of American Werewolf in London or Evil Dead 2, where you're laughing one minute and just so disgusted you're laughing the next, and scared. You're trapped somewhere in the woods, and it's like your friend turns into the flesh-eating monster, only this time it's this real disease. $50 million. So when you're making a movie on that low budget, you gotta find, you gotta be creative. You gotta push the gore, you gotta be creative. You gotta push the gore, push the scares, be totally politically incorrect, really making it as shocking and violent. History of human nature, when people get leprosy, they're sent to leper colonies. Smallpox, they're put in isolation. And 2 years ago, when the SARS outbreak hit China, what did they do? They sealed those people off. They didn't take them to the hospital because nobody knew what this was and nobody wanted to get it. They sealed those people in a building until they figured out what the hell it was. And I think that the kids aren't monsters. I think that they're just behaving the way kids would behave. And that's one of the things that's made the film, I think, such a success in America, is no connections. I mean, my father's a doctor, my mother's an artist, but I grew up in Massachusetts, in Boston, which is the farthest point from California geographically in the United States you can be. So I wanted to just totally immerse myself and learn it inside out. That I worked as assistants, and I love doing animation because you have total control over the characters, but I love live action, and I think that there's many different paths towards one goal, and these are all the different things I did to get to that goal of directing. And you know, I think if you love something, you embrace all aspects of it. That I know a lot of people get, if you do one thing, that's kind of how you're thought of. But I like writing, I like producing, I like directing, I like animating, I like drawing, I like painting. I enjoy doing all these things. I like inventing new ideas. That's why I'm here in Frankfurt. We're meeting with other inventors and scientists and engineers. You know, that's fun. I think I get bored when I do the same thing over and over, and I think it makes you better things. I like inventing new ideas. That's why I'm here in Frankfurt. We're meeting with other inventors. And so the main influences are easily Tobe Hooper's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, John Carpenter's The Thing, Sam Raimi's The Evil Dead. But I love I love Nosferatu. I mean, there were, you know, Fritz Lang is one of my favorite directors. I saw Metropolis when I was in college, and I was working for a producer, and David Lynch needed research for a project. So it was for David Lynch and Angelo Badalamenti, his composer, and I spent years doing research for him. Then I moved to LA, and he called me, and he's like, Eli, man, we're going on the net. davidlynch.com. It's gonna be beautiful, man. And I went to his house and he starts telling me all these ideas, and I just started shooting this stuff with David Lynch. We're shooting puppet shows, the show with rabbits, and you know, I told him about Cabin Fever, which I had written, and he was really, really helpful. Gave me music, you know, just for free, just as a favor. It was really, really cool. And I told David Lynch, I will do anything for free. Get coffee for him, I do it, because it's so fun being around that guy. I learned so much about directing I learned more from David Lynch than any other director. I mean, he's so nice. He says mental institution. He was totally psychotic, and the old guy behind the general store with the white beard, he'd never been in a movie before. So I thought these people had such great southern flavor. Stylistically, I sat down with my cameraman before we shot, and we watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre, watched Lucio Fulci's House by the Cemetery. There were certain movies that you know, if you go to like a date movie, you're like, oh, when do I put my arm around? In a horror movie, she grabs your hand 5 minutes into it. Like, you grab her knee. It's a very physical experience. Like, you should be all over each other during Cabin Fever. And then after, the girl's always like, oh, I'm too scared. I don't want to go home and sleep alone. You're like, no, come over to my house. And then you put on Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and you close the deal. Like, if you can't get laid after taking a date to see Cabin Fever, you're pathetic. You really are pathetic. This movie was engineered to make people have sex. And I've talked to a number of people who were like, that's exactly what happened. I saw it with a date. My date didn't want to sleep alone. I took her back to my place. A number of people who were like, that's exactly what happened. I saw it with a date. My date didn't want to sleep alone. I took her back to my place, and, you know, I nailed the stuff. Universal Studios called Scavenger Hunt. I have a new company that's producing horror movies called Raw Nerve. We just produced a movie called 2001 Maniac starring Robert Englund, who played Freddy Krueger. And I'm writing a movie with a filmmaker named Richard Kelly, who wrote and directed Donnie Darko, which is a popular cult movie. We're writing a horror.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I grew up in Boston, and there's a certain type of guy from Boston, we call it massholes. And the guys, they drink, band, party, and, you know, I lived with those guys, and I got beat up by those guys, and kind of was one of those guys. So a lot of the times, you know, when you're on set, you could kind of act like that. I'd be like, dude, bro. But Quentin loved it. I mean, Brad was Aldo, and I was Donnie, the Bear Jew, the whole time. And there was a PA named Carla, and I was like, Carla! I had these guys in my head for 8 years, and now I get to hang out with them. This is so cool. So, but, you know, the beating scenes, it was very cathartic to get that out of your system. But, you know, the truth is that when I'm filming a death scene, I get happier and happier as the day goes on. As I'm getting my shot, conjure up the most painful, darkest stuff from your entire life and bring it right to the surface like it just happened 10 minutes ago. So I noticed at the end of the day, I was just drained. I didn't want to talk to anybody. You just wanted to crawl into a hole and die, and then you get up and do it again the next day. So certain days were fun, but on the days when I had to kill somebody, it was really, really much more intense thing that you were never supposed to do. But, you know, there was a real purpose to it. I mean, this wasn't for shock. This was, and, you know, and we were shooting going, okay, this has to hang with Inglourious Basterds. So I got to bring it as... Yeah, I mean, the whole idea with Knock Knock, in all of my films, I've always tried to incorporate technology. I think Cabin Fever is the only one I was like, whoa, there's no cell reception, which is like really bad college 22-year-old writing. But in Hostel, it was the first movie that used text messaging and sending photos by phone as a plot point. And I remember people were like, wow, that's so futuristic. And now you think about that, and it's, of course you do that. Even in Hemlock Grove, it was the first show that used iPhones, and it had the sounds from iPhones, and it really gave it a level of authenticity. When we were writing Knock Knock, my co-writers Nicolas Lopez, Guillermo Amoedo, and I, we really thought about ways that you could ruin someone's life using technology. And also, there's a big difference in the way someone in their 40s thinks versus someone in their 20s. You know, someone in their 40s, maybe they use Facebook, maybe they use social media, but you know, if you're 14, 15, 16, or in your early 20s and you've grown up with that, you know all these different tricks. Your whole mentality of how to use social media and how to use a phone, it's completely different. And what's terrifying to me, to someone in their 40s, is that there is nothing private anymore. You know, there's a whole generation that's grown up with no concept of privacy. They're broadcasting, but we grew up in this era where kind of all of your behavior, for me, before it's not recorded, thank God. So I wanted to show what can happen. What terrifies me is the idea that, you know, in the time of Fatal Attraction, you could do something like this. Maybe your wife found out, maybe your people at work, but now if you misbehave, you cheat on your wife, you do something wrong, it can literally be broadcast to the whole planet. Yeah, I was very lucky with the cast. You know, Keanu Reeves has been one of my favorite actors. I mean, it's no accident the guy's been famous since the 80s, and I don't think he really gets enough credit for what a superb actor he is. And I wanted to show an actor's piece, to show where he's funny and warm and trying to be nice he almost becomes this feral animal by the end of the film. Obviously, Lorenza Izzo, I love, and I've worked with her since Aftershock, side by side as an actor. And her performance is so different in Knock Knock from Green Inferno, where she's the innocent and the naive. Here, she seems innocent, but she's really the perpetrator, and there's so many layers to her performance. And Ana de Armas, this newcomer, is a fantastic actor who'd been working in Spain. She's a Cuban actress, and I just love the chemistry of the three of them. That's
a place that no cameras had ever been before, so it was pretty crazy. I mean, I wanted to have an adventure every single day. There was no electricity, no running water. These people had not only never seen a movie, there were poisonous snakes and tarantulas. It was the Amazon. It was no joke. It was scary at times, but I'm glad we pushed it and did it, and it's making me a better director. It's actually much easier to direct, at 40 than at 30, and I feel like there was no awareness of a camera. They didn't know what a camera was, so we had to show them, and they don't get. People will come out of the movie and go, unless you've seen Cannibal Holocaust or one of those old, they'll go, or Fitzcarraldo, the old Werner Herzog, they'll go, I've never parts into Peru, because people actually ship real body parts. So we had fake heads and fake arms, and all that stuff got confiscated by them. And even though it was fake and we explained it was a movie, it was very hard. Like it was a crazy time shooting in Peru and shooting in the Amazon. But we went way up the river, farther than anyone's ever gone before, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. We had an amazing crew, an amazing cast, and it really shows in the footage. There's nothing.
About a couple of American friends. There's a friend from Iceland that are backpacking through Europe, and they're looking for European girls and drugs and all that kind of stuff they can't find in America. And they hear about a hostel in Slovakia that's rumored to be filled with beautiful girls. So they go there, and it actually is, and everybody hooks up, and the girls seem to love Americans. And then one of the friends disappears, and it starts to lead to something darker and more sinister, and the guys eventually realize they're trapped into something really horrible. It's this really violent journey into hell, and slow burn horror film. There's a Japanese movie that I love called Audition, directed by Takashi Miike, who I put in a cameo in the movie as a guy coming out of this factory. And it doesn't start off scary. You know, I wanted the movie to be this journey into hell, and I wanted kind of the first act in Amsterdam with these guys paying for hookers to sort of mirror the third act in Slovakia, where businessmen are paying to torture people. So I didn't want to start off all scary and gloomy with lots of blood and death, because I think that would be, that gets boring after 90 minutes. And I really wanted the audience to get seduced along with the characters. I wanted them to sort of be on the journey with them. So it doesn't start off really that scary and boring. It's much more fun and get to know the guys, and then things just get worse and worse and worse and worse until it goes so much farther. And lucky enough to get to go around touring at these film festivals. And I started seeing movies that never come to America. And I was exposed to directors like Takashi Miike, who did Audition and Ichi the Killer, and films coming out of South Korea like Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. And I just thought, oh my God, what the hell is going on in these Asian countries that they are making the movies this violent? And what I saw was that American movies try to play it safe. American horror movies, they don't want to offend people.
And the kind of the directors like Miike understand that what makes a great horror movie is that it lives in that danger zone, that dangerous territory. And you harkens back to kind of Italian cinema in the 70s, films like Cannibal Holocaust or Pasolini's Salò, where they're making movies that are so violent, but they're not trying to please everybody. They're not for everybody. They're for a very specific audience. They're like, this is a sick movie. If you don't like it, stay the hell away from it. And I just felt like nobody was doing anything like that in America. So that's what I wanted to do. And I also like the fact that the Asian films aren't really pure, they're not exactly pure horror movies. It's not like The Grudge or The Ring. Like there's a wave of these ultra-violent films that are much more horrific than scary. You know, it's about like real people doing real things, and they're just horrifying and disturbing. And that's the type of movie. There's nothing worse than what's going on in New Orleans. I mean, I can put the most violent stuff in a film, and people know it's fake. They're paying for fantasy. They've seen the actors doing interviews. They know they're alive, so it allows them to enjoy the violence. What gets people desensitized is when there's school shootings every week. It's when we say, oh, another 10 people were killed in Iraq. When we have this horrifying than anything I could ever put in a movie, and it's real. And that makes people think, God, you know what? There's no police, there's no army, no one's going to save us, everything's going to fall apart, there's horrible racial tension, and nobody's in charge. That's what gets people desensitized. The more was it never really felt like work or started like work. You know, Quentin loved Cabin Fever and invited me to his house to watch movies after he saw it. And we struck up this friendship where, you know, he'd show me old movies like Black Belly the Tarantula, and I'd be like, oh, dude, you got to see this movie Shaun of the Dead. And I got him a print of Shaun of the Dead and introduced him to Edgar Wright. So, you know, I was kind of meeting all the young filmmakers, and he was showing me a lot of older movies. And he really became one of the only people I can trust in Hollywood. You know, he's a young director. You made your first movie. There's so many different holes you can fall into. And I kept turning down these studio movies. And I was like, Quentin, am I making a mistake by turning down these films? He's like, no, man, you're a writer, director. And he's like, what ideas do you have? And I told him the idea for Hostel. He's like, Eli, that is the sickest idea for a horror movie. He's like, you got to do that. You got to write that movie. So I ran home, and in 2.5 weeks, I wrote the script. And I was just possessed. I'd been taking a lot of meetings, and I just unplugged my phone, shut off my email, and I said, I am just writing. And I wrote, and I showed it to Quentin, and he's like, this is so good. He's like, but it can actually be better. He's like, what's going to make this movie great if it feels real? And there are a couple of moments that feel like, oh, this could only happen in a movie. He's like, that's movie convenience. And I'm going to call through the whole script, and he's like, okay, there's this moment here. This could only happen in a movie. You and I, how would we get out of it? And we talked through it. And he was doing it purely just to help me. And then I took it again and wrote another pass, and he's like, this is fantastic. He's like, this could really be a classic. He's like, I'd love to get involved. Maybe make it a Quentin Tarantino Presents or come on as executive producer. So during the writing process, he was terrific. And I also had two other exec producers, Bo Isaac Keane and Scott Spiegel. Boaz wrote and directed a great movie called Fresh, and Scotty wrote Evil Dead 2 with Sam Raimi. And they're old friends with Quentin, so at each step, I could use these guys as sounding boards and show them a draft. Like, oh, that's great, but what about this or this? And, you know, when you're writing, you're kind of off in your own world, but it's really good to surround yourself with people you trust and people that'll tell you, okay, that's a good idea, that's a bad idea, or you know what, I see what you're going for, you're not quite there, how about this or this or this? And I just felt so lucky that, you know, all my producers, Drop Dead Fred with Rick Mayall was known as one of the funniest scripts ever written, and some Dutch director came in and like didn't know how to use Rick Mayall. It was like a comic genius, and the movie's a mess. So it's like, it was frustrating for the director, it was frustrating for the writer, it was frustrating for the star, but, you know, it just kind of had the wrong ingredients. Love and, like, worship where I was writing something for them, and I knew that right from the outset, I couldn't do it any other way. I mean, the frustrating part is when you, I mean, for me, it's like, people told me with Hostel, this will never work, this is too sick, and one of the things I did was, you know, we very consciously made this movie an ultra low budget. I mean, a very low budget movie in Hollywood is 35 or 40 million, or 20 million is like the lowest they'll go. And we did it for 4 million. And the reason we did it was because we didn't want anyone telling us what to do, and we could just put in our own ideas and be as violent as we wanted. And it was just really gratifying that the crowds really, and I also produced my own movies. I think for me, the only way to do it is to write, produce, and direct. Because if I write a movie and you give it to a director and they screw it up, it's like, you know, it's so frustrating. I mean, it's like this movie Drop Dead Fred with Rick Mayall was known as one of the funniest scripts ever written, and some Dutch director came in and like didn't know how to use Rick Mayall. It was like a comic genius, and the movie's a mess. So it's like, it was frustrating for the director, it was frustrating for the writer, it was frustrating for the star, but, you know, it just kind of had the wrong ingredients. But when you have an idea in your head and I write it, unless it was a director.
The title Knock Knock came to us actually when we were writing the film. It was Nicolas Lopez, our co-writer. We were thinking, what could we call this? And Knock Knock. We loved the simplicity of it and what it led to, and just, you know, the knock knock joke, them knocking on the door, them showing up in the middle of the night. I like a title that gets you thinking and leads to other mysteries, and it was a very simple title, Knock. All of my films before are very bloody. They're known for and this is a first thriller that I've done, and it is, I feel like the films I've made before, I've spilled all the blood I can, and I wanted to show that I could have that same tension and same scare, but with basically one drop of blood. People for years have been saying to me, when are you going to do something psychological? Like, I can't stomach the violence. When's there something that I can see? And this is that movie. I wanted to make a film that was like Fatal Attraction for the millennials. I wanted to have a real actor's piece, a real stylish camera work, real fantastic sex scene, but also go dark and twisted and crazy in a way that nobody else can, but without using the violence. I want psychological violence. I'm substituting destruction of art for destruction of body parts. I want to show a whole different side of me as a director, but still with that same trademark insanity that I have in all my films. I want people to come out of this movie going, oh my God, I completely didn't expect it in mind. But in this case, we wrote it for Genesis for Lorenza Izzo. You know, I'd worked with Lorenza Izzo on Aftershock and Hemlock Grove, and she starred in The Green Inferno. So we wanted to write a character for her to really be a tour de force. That's this leading character that's very different from Green Inferno, where she plays an innocent, something that starts nice and sweet, but shows these layers and layers and layers of a sociopath that you don't even know who she really is by the end of the film. But with Belle, we originally wrote it just as an American girl, and then Ana de Armas, we met her, and I put her together with Lorenza, and I just thought, oh my God, this is the combination. If those two girls showed up at your door, what guy wouldn't fall into that temptation? Evan Weber, we had a type of guy that we wrote, and it was our producer, Miguel Asensio, said, this has to be Keanu Reeves. And once he said it, we couldn't get it out of our heads, because our producer, Cassian Elway, said the same thing. He said, this should be Keanu. So two of your producers came to that conclusion. We all just started seeing him, and Cassian got the script to Keanu, who read it and loved it and felt this was like funny games, that this could really be an acting tour de force for him. You know, I think Keanu Reeves, it is no accident he's been a movie star since the 80s. He's an incredible, incredible actor, and we all know him for his action films. This is the first time he's ever played a dad in a movie film. He's warm and sweet and vulnerable and nice, and I think what we're seeing now is a huge turning point in Keanu's career. We're seeing what we're going to get for the next 30 or another 25 years of leading performances from him. But I want this to be his Oscar-nominated performance. I want people to watch Knock Knock and go, oh my God, Keanu is so funny, so wonderful. It's a real, real actor's piece. He's just incredible. Together, I go, well, we really need to start prep in a week. He's like, what? I go, yeah, we have this house and these people moved out and we have all this artwork. He goes, are you two insane? It was a combination of several events. One, I was watching the old 70s cannibal films. They never make that movie today because the jungle's not there anymore. You know, it's gone. It's all disappearing. I thought, okay, that's my end. It's like, it's not a boat to protect the jungle, to stop, you know, the uncontacted tribes. But at the same time, Occupy Wall Street was happening. And during Occupy Wall Street, there was a relative of mine who was occupying. And I remember he graduated college and I was like, oh, is he working? What's he doing? And my mom was like, oh no, he's occupying. And I was like, well, what's he occupying against? I mean, he hasn't really been screwed over by anybody. He like grew up in a nice family and went to college. And like, well, he goes with his friends, they meet girls, you know, that's what they do. And I just thought, okay, all right, great. Like CNN retweeted us, we made Reddit. Like that's the end game, is to make the front page of Reddit. Game over, that's what matters. So I wanted these people to crash in the jungle with the very people they saved. And those people who, there's no technology, they have no access to technology or anything, they've never seen modern man, they just see them as invaders and they're gonna treat them as such. So I wanted to go to a place that looked and felt dangerous. You know, I feel that so many movies now are either, and look, there are a lot of good ones, but they're set in a house, they're in a safe environment, they're done in a green screen, they're done in a computer, and that's perfectly okay, but I miss the dangerous filmmaking. I miss watching those movies like Apocalypse Now or Apocalypse, and you go, these people, the people who made this movie were legitimately crazy. Like, you'd have to be insane to make a movie like this. There's no visual effects. Like, you're really, even in the plane crash, which has been on Daryl Sabara, when he's like peeing and there's a tarantula, that's a real poisonous tarantula that's crawling by him. So everybody in the cast fully went for it. And I think that's one of the reasons the movie really works. When you see them, they're in the dirt and they're surrounded by pig shit and they're getting bit by bugs. There's no makeup there. The like, we had to send cast members to the hospital. We had to get yellow fever shots. We had anti-malaria pills. We had to get deparasited after we were Amazon. It was crazy. When the kids drop a snake on Kirby and Magda's face, that is a real snake. I was standing there and the kids turned around, they're like, oh, the kids have an idea. And they had a baby python. And I was like, what do they want? They go, well, the kids thought it'd be funny if we threw it in the cage with you know, the Americans. And I was like, actually, that's a great idea. We're gonna do that. And so we did the take, and I look at the TV freeze frame at The thing's like 2 inches from biting her face, so it was just that kind of a shoot. But you know what? I love Nicolas Lopez Spanish language films. I'm a huge fan of Promedio Rojo. And I also even watch I mean, we love low budget, mainstream but low budget, high quality. You know, we didn't want anything to look low budget. It's that both of us have done movies in our own way. We've learned where to save money. Safety officers and all the stunt people. I remember the scene in the club, there's girls in heels and skirts, and I said, wow, I can't believe Chile has all these hundreds of stunt girls. And he's like, ha ha, stunt girls, gringo, these are models. I was like, what? I was like, they've never been in a movie? He's like, no. Ooh, gringo's so worried about everything. You're so gringo about it. So then we closed our eyes and we dropped, thank God no one got hurt. I was pinned under the concrete in the cemetery. I looked around and I saw all the graves and there were skeletons and bones and hair. And I said, God, the art department did an amazing job. This looks so real. And he's like, gringo, art department. I'm like, what? He's like, they just let us in an hour ago. This has been closed since the earthquake. They literally opened the door and let us in shoot there because there's so many areas that are destroyed, they can't use it. We just walked in. Wes Craven was one of those names that as you got older, his films grew with you. So when I was a kid, it was before VCRs. So it was a film that your friend's older brother saw. So you'd have them going, oh, that's a movie. And they take the girl. And finally saw it. It actually lived up to the descriptions. It was so disturbing. But Nightmare on Elm Street was a film that traumatized me. I remember I saw it on a VCR and I had to pause it, and I think we played Clue for like 6 hours just to like cleanse ourselves of Elm Street, and then I had to finish it during the day. I was actually too scared to watch the movie. And then in the 90s, Scream brought back horror. So just to think of someone who has not only just had 3 massive influential horror films, but in 3 different decades, it's insane. When I made my first film, Cabin Fever, I made it for a very low budget, and I didn't have money for music, like to put songs. So I was reading of Last House on the Left, and it has this kind of Harry Nilsson folky music done by David Alexander Hess. And I remember thinking, like, God, this is 1972 and this is 2002. You couldn't use this music in a movie today. And I thought, that's it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to track down that music. And so I took 6 songs from Last House on the Left, and I got the guy who plays the killer who sings these songs. It was his kids did a cover for the end credits. It was something super, super geeky. And he heard the Last House on the Left music and was like, oh my God, this guy's the real deal. And I met Wes and I was like, hi, nice to meet you. Sorry, I stole 6 songs from your movie. About 5 or 6 years ago, this trailer showed up around Halloween for a movie called Clown, where a guy puts on a clown suit for his kid's birthday party and he can't take it off. And he starts turning into this monster. And the hair, he keeps cutting the hair and it grows back and he rips the nose, fuses it. And then it said, or Twitter, kind of pre-social media, what it is. So you couldn't really dispel the rumor. So everyone thought I directed this movie. So I tracked down the director, John Watts, and I called him and I said, I love this. Do you want to turn this into a feature? And he said, well, thank you for not suing me. And I said, well, this is Hollywood. We don't sue each other until after we make money. Like, let's make the movie first. Then we can sue each other all we want. And he told me that John and his co-writer, Chris Ford, they'd written a movie called Frank and Robot that was going to go to Sundance. They had this idea for a feature. And we spent about probably half a year hashing it out, really working on the mythology, going scene by scene, really thinking through all the possibilities of what would happen if this happened to you. And he just made this fantastic film. This company, Vertebra Films, came in and financed the movie, and we really just let John go crazy and do what he wanted. And he did it on a low budget and made it look amazing, and the rest is history. Now, even though he hadn't done a feature, his commercials and videos were so smart. He was part of this collective, Smuggler Films, and his stuff just looked amazing. Everything he did had that real beautiful, clean polish. And I just knew if he applied that aesthetic to a horror film, he'd make something really special. His second film, Cop Car, is fantastic. But it was a pleasure. It's nice when you work with a director like John. It's that same experience I had with Ty West making The Sacrament, or Daniel Stam doing Last Exorcism, where you can just really be there as support, but just Grimm's fairy tales going back hundreds of years. I mean, those are the oldest horror stories there are, and there's a reason we've been telling them. Eaten by witches and eaten by trolls. So when you're dealing with clowns, I think what makes clowns creepy is that they are around children, and that we do let them around children, and that when we as children, we're so fascinated by them that you think, oh my gosh, this is a grown man that we let around kids just because they have clown makeup on, and then someone could use that to do horrible things to children. So I think that's where clowns started to get a bad name as being creepy. And there hadn't really been a horror film in a while that explored that. And I think that what John came up with that was so clever is the idea that it's not he's evil, it's the suit that's evil. That once whoever puts this on is going to transform into this thing, and in that way it really becomes much more like The Fly. And that's what I thought was brilliant, was their way in to tell this story, that it's not just, okay, clowns are scary, let's make a scary movie, but what if you were just a dad trying to do the right thing to help your kid, and you dressed up like a clown because the clown you wanted didn't show up to the birthday party, and you just put on the wrong clown suit. You really feel for this guy as he's trying to resist the urge, but you know, we wanted to stay true to the fairy tale mythology. And that's why we made a movie that was, you know, probably... And he told me the story, and I said, I will do anything to help you make this movie. And we read the screenplay and bring it to our partners, Eric Newman and Mark Abraham, who are fantastic producers and, you know, made a lot of great movies. And then we take it to Universal with that team, and then we bring on Bill Kong, and then Corey Yuen comes on for the fights, and it just snowballs from there. You're not just seeing another fight, you're moving the story forward, but you're really unfolding another corner of this world with, oh wow, okay, that's the roads, okay, these guys go underground, that's really cool, okay, these are the Falcons, they live in the trees, and these, you know, it's Jungle Village. We wanted to really create a universe, and that's what we spent a year and a half in the writing, thinking of every clan, thinking of their weapon, thinking of what their relationship is with other clans, so that, you know, there's, you know, also the rhythm of the dialogue. I mean, there was a lot, but you know, it really kind of harnessing what he did with Wu-Tang. He really was able to produce all of that and really bring in Dave Bautista and Russell Crowe and Kanye West and Wiz Khalifa and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, all these people from all these different worlds. You know, everybody coming together and...
Good horror, there's you want to have some sort of message underneath it. I never like to go to the movies and have a history lesson forced down my throat, but I love when I'm watching gory movies over and over and watching people's heads be ripped off and guts get torn out. And then you realize that the direct told me about this earthquake that hit in February 2010 in Chile, and it was an 8.8. Basically, society collapsed, where he said it was a whole generation, their iPhones went out, so nobody knew anyone's phone numbers. And without GPS, nobody knew how to get anywhere. And he called his girlfriend on the phone. She's like, yeah, I'm at the coast. There's just a tsunami. I had heard he was auditioning people for it. And then the night before he leaves for Berlin, he's like, hey, man, I'm starving. You want to get some food? I'm like, sure. I knew he was making his movie, and I hadn't bothered him. Am I going to be in a movie with Brad Pitt as the Bear Jew in this? I'm going to do the bat. He's like, yeah. I'm like, can we have a toast? He's like, yeah, here, cheers. Listen, it's got to be about that until I sat down at dinner with him. But literally, and then I was like, well, and then I said, I killed. And so it's like their parents were in America, but everybody had cousins that were things that, like, they grew up watching everyone coming back in the 50s. It's different. It's kind of like, I have a, you know, BMW. Like, it's okay. You can get a Mercedes now. It's different. It's like the generation, they've really, they're all, the generation before them is dead, and the new people, and I brought my parents over, and it was a very moving experience. They were like, we should have come over sooner. The best thing for anyone Jewish, go to Germany. The people are wonderful. It was great. And we're sitting at the premiere. Parents, we all just burst into tears. It was some weird, even though we knew it was pretend, as my father said, there was the historical reality and the emotional reality connected with everybody. So that's Quentin, though. He's so tuned into these things that you just does, you know, that everyone's in horror movies. I did animation, and I sang that song. That's me singing Rotten Fruit with a rotten. My friend Noah Belson and I, we'd known each other since 7th grade. We were watching this, right? Yeah, my dad was great. My father's a psychoanalyst and was a professor at Harvard, recently retired. But my parents were great. My mom's a painter. They took me to all kinds of movies. They believed I should be allowed to see anything. I never saw movie violence as real. I always saw it. You know, I went to go see Alien with my dad, and I was like so terrified. I was 8 years old. I was freaked out. And then at the end, Sigourney Weaver started taking her clothes off. My parents looked at me like, are you going to throw up? And just my parents looking at me, it was psychosomatic. I was like, and I ran down the aisles and projectile vomited over like 3 rows of people. Dumps, it's like a Monty Python thing. Dumps a bucket, like you're with your date, and it just pukes on you and then runs out. And I remember my mom like following me in the bathroom. I'm like, Mom, you can't go in the bathroom. She's like, no more horror movies, no more horror movies. I was like, it was. Well, when it played at the Toronto Film Festival, we had 2 ambulance calls, which was great. One person passed out, and one person fainted on the escalator and rolled down, which is great.
These 2 girls who can't physically overpower Keanu have to have him tied up. They've done it before. I mean, they're not like Boy Scouts. They understand it, but I need him to be tied up in a way that it looks like these girls did it and he really can't move. So I also want him to look kind of cool. You know, you got to make sure that he does. And that's okay, because to me it was always make-believe and pretend. And I always thought no matter what I'm doing on a movie set, there's nothing worse than what's going on in the real world. I mean, people, and he said, oh, they're just pigeons. I was like, these are creatures, these are animals. And I actually remember the guilt tripping. I couldn't be in the house anymore. I couldn't be friends with this person, knowing that these people left their dog out there suffering. And they had this attitude, whoa, it's just a dog. But you could see how upset this animal was. So I'm always very, very affected by violence in real life, and certainly violence against animals, all in good fun, I guess you could say. But I wanted to use that attention that I get where this hobby we had collecting all these cards, we now have them, but we just like, I don't know what.
In December of 2004. And then after we kind of spent the day going through the script, he goes, hey, you want to hear a scene from Inglourious Basterds? And around April of 2008, while he was writing it, and he was at my Passover Seder, was with all my friends in Boston. He leaves for Berlin, he calls me and asks me to go grab some food with him. So we're at dinner, and he's like, look, Donowitz has to be a real character. This isn't Death Proof. You got to know this like your best friend. It's got to be 360-degree person. Who's his parent? And I was like, well, Quentin, I wasn't going to do that research until I knew I had. He's telling me I'm going to be in a leading role with Brad Pitt, and he's like, yeah, I'm like, can we do a toast? He's like, yeah, here, cheers. And we just did. He's like, that's it. But I dropped everything, put on 40 pounds of muscle, went to Boston, and if you ever wanted to see, it's everything that I had fantasized about, visualized. It's exactly what you would do. It's like this dream that you had, and you realize that somebody else had that same dream, and now you're sharing it with all these other people. I'm sorry, but that was one of the best screens. It felt like the energy of the red carpet of Cannes was in that room. I've never been in a screen like that. It was like electric. Thursday night he had movie night. I mean, leading up to it, he showed The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. He showed The Dirty Dozen. He showed it's Rod Taylor and Jim Brown on this bar firing into a crowd. And when he said the ending, he's like, Dark of the Sun.
Yeah, it's been great. I have a good team. It's fun. It's like our whole Chiliwood crew. Nicolas Lopez, Guillermo Moedo. Our team in Chile, and of course Lorenza and Ignacia and Aaron Burns, the whole cast.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, that's the whole idea, is that I wanted to use the camera work to tell the story and to show character. And there's 3 kind of moves through the house where we take our time going through. The first time is just introducing everything. The second time is at night, and the third time is the end when it's just complete destruction. Thank you. I wanted to make a very different type of movie than Green Inferno. Obviously, Green Inferno is like my mic drop. I mean, I don't know where to go from there. So I remember Peter Jackson, after he made Brain Dead, he went and did Heavenly Creatures, and that was the kind of film I wanted to do. I wanted to show a movie that really had one drop of blood, basically, in the movie, but still had that same amount of tension, that was really an actor's piece, that you could show the range of Lorenza, who's so different as Justine in Green Inferno, to Genesis and Knock Knock. Aaron Burns, who's Jonah, the kind of nice, goofy guy. It's a big moment here. And it was just such a pleasure to work with Keanu Reeves and, find incredible talent like Ana de Armas and give her English language break. She's an amazing kid. Yeah, no, look, I mean, there are movies like The Strangers and Funny Games that I really like, but one of the things that struck me about Peter Trainor's Death Game, which Colleen Camp was in 1975, it's a very little seen film, but really kind of a masterpiece, is the way these girls show up. There's just the premise of 2 girls showing up at your house and cheating on your wife, and then they won't leave, and it really unravels your life. And what happens when you lose control? Keanu lets the vampire in. In Fatal Attraction, Dan makes the mistake. I won't be ignored, Dan. Like, it's Dan's fault, and that's what's scary. Whether it's Hard Candy or even Polanski's Death and the Maiden does a great job. That was a big influence, certainly on the look of the movie, written by a Chilean, Ariel Dorfman. So, Nicolas Lopez, Guillermo Moedo, and I looked at all of these movies, and we wanted to show something that was that modern Fatal Attraction psychosexual thriller, but something that really showed social media and how now nothing is private anymore. In the times of Fatal Attraction, maybe your wife found out and your bunny got boiled and your kids knew, but now everything you do can be broadcast to the entire world. And look what happened a couple of weeks ago with the Ashley Madison hack, where there's 37 million people that are unhappy in a relationship and are looking for something outside. I'm not judging them or saying they're bad people or anything, but there's something in their relationship that is broken. There's a reason they're signing up for this. And now their credit cards, their emails, and all of their sexual fantasies are detailed and on the internet forever. That's
on a personal side.
Also, I'm 43, and the way I would use social media or use Facebook or Twitter or anything is completely different than the way a 17. We were looking at the Instagrams of some of the cast members, younger sisters who are about 15 years old, and their friends, you can't tell if the girls are 15 or 25, the way they're so sexualized themselves to get likes. They're in bikinis with their tongues out. That's just what it is. I remember when I was 15, the girls, they looked 15. Now they look, you can't tell. And I wanted to play on that, that generational difference where Keanu tries to be a father at first to these girls and then realizes that they're sexually attracted to him, and finally he just says, I'm gonna take the free pizza, and it destroys it.
I remember the Icelanders were like, did you cut the American doesn't know how to shave? Like, they're looking at me, they've come out, look, we're in a foreign country. It can be scary going to a hospital, especially when you walk into the doctor's office. So finally, she goes, can I have a sample of it? I went, sure. And they were like, it was some crazy ringworm infection that I got. And it was, that's what inspired the movie. I thought, wow, you can be totally healthy
And fans, when you create a new show, it's not like watching a movie, embracing it and loving it, and the show is wildly successful, and hopefully Argentina, Chile, the fans are the same. They love it, and it's really great when you can give scary story set in that world. You know, every country has their own monster. Every country has its own, you know, the ghosts in Japan, you know, Japan with the girls and the well, the hair. Every country has their own horror stories, and people love it when you can take a classic like the vampire, werewolf, Frankenstein, the monsters, and reinvent them in an interesting way. And that's what we thought Brian McGreevy really did with his novel, Hemlock Grove. And we wanted to create a series that felt something like, more in the style of David Lynch, Twin Peaks, but almost with a touch of Douglas Sirk melodrama, but something that was spooky and stylized, intelligent and fun. And it was really great of Hemlock Grove. People are fascinated with small town American life. And we worked very hard to create a universe that is something special and unique, and of course, your significant other. It's like a serious offense in a relationship. But no, it was instrumental in the. I remember in season 1 when we talked about all 13 episodes going on at once. It really changed the way we could write the show. We didn't have to write for commercial breaks. We didn't have to do recaps. You're right there in your home. You're with your friends. You put it on. You watch another one and another one. And we knew that. You know, we love Brian McGreevy's novel, and the first season we were fitting 13 episodes to that novel. So there were times you could feel when we were stretching. We felt in watching it after, we go, okay, I could feel this one we stretched it a little bit to get to this story point. Steve delved much deeper into her character because she's such an incredible actor with such amazing range. We wanted to show all the different layers of Olivia, and we fit it to 10 episodes so that everything was story, 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 but we wrote it knowing that people in general are watching 3 or 4 series of 10. And sort of stretching, having those huge moments like the transformation. Obviously, we want the turns back into a human. What does that look like? We got to see what that looks like. And Spencer saw. We realized that at 10 episodes, we were just a little more focused, and we could really make each episode. Like, let's focus on making 10 amazing, amazing episodes and really writing those huge kind of big set pieces where people go, oh my God, I've never seen that done before. Mm-hmm. And it was just a little more manageable. It was a little more. 13 worked for the book, but now that we were, creating stuff on our own without the book, we thought that 10 would be really, let's make 10 really, really great. Yeah. I mean, Chick worked under James Cameron on Dark Angel. Like, the guy, he's worked with he's such an amazing range of experience working with such great producers, creators. That what was really nice was we had the book last year. We had an amazing team last season, but it did feel like we didn't have that one. So the book was the central voice, and we needed one person that could really be the central voice and the filter for all their ideas. Because I'm gonna have a million ideas, but I also at my presence, I can't just show up and be like, hey guys, what if we do this? Like, I need to. We all agreed the best way to work was to everyone kind of filters everything through Chick. And I could say, what if I remember saying to him, I was like, what if I want to see what happens if Peter, he's been so careful about being a Vargal, being aware of and where he can transform, and it's such a secretive thing that he would only let Romans. So what if at the beginning of the second season he's just doing it to a bunch of strangers, and we realize just how completely far gone he is and how he just doesn't give a fuck about anything. And Chick's like, and I was like, what if he's doing it just fuck with some people? And Chick's like, no man, he should. I was like, what if he's doing it making them think they're hallucinating and think it was drugs? And Chick's like, yeah, he should be doing it as a grift. We're like, that's it. He's like, it's like a drug deal. We're using it to trick people into thinking they're hallucinating, to sell drugs, sell fake drugs to get money. And that's what we loved about Chick was we could say, what happens to you when you have the ability and you force it against the wrong moon? How does that start to make you go insane? What does that wreak havoc? It was really a metaphor for being self-destructive and going on some kind of crazy drug binge you're not supposed to do. But then just understood how to take that idea and immediately incorporate it so that you understand why he's doing it. And that's what's great about someone like Chick is he could take any crazy idea we threw at him and really understand how to turn it into story and turn it into character-based story. I'll think visually, think of ideas, think of characters, this or that. And Famke's obviously she's a director and a creator and writer, and we all have ideas. But Chick is so experienced and cool and we love him. And he was a great addition to the show, and he has his own ideas as well. So it just became one central voice in how the network made David Lynch and Mark Frost solve Laura Palmer's murder, and the frustration it led to, and really about the people in the town. And then they solved the murder, and they had to come up with Wyndham Earle, a new villain, in the Black Lodge, which a storyline I love, but you could tell if you explained it to Netflix. We talked about a 3-season, 3 to 5 season macro arcs of where the characters are. But after the first season, we sat down and we looked at those macro arcs. Okay, this is where we had, sort of a multi-season plan for where the characters were going to go, and then we brought in Chick, who's like completely fresh set of eyes, who just watched it as a fan. He's like, I love the show, but here's where I'd take it. And suddenly you're like, oh my God, that's actually an amazing idea. So it was a combination of sort of knowing the macro arc of where we were going to go, but also seeing what worked. And we're like, everybody loves the guys here. When you see Roman and Peter together, I ran into him, he's like, what's good? Please tell me Shelley isn't dead. Like, Shelley's my favorite. Like, you could see there were a lot of people that have that introspective, poetic, sensitive side. Well, there were ideas. I mean, Brian McGreevy had an idea. We wanted to we're going to do a graphic novel of a bridge between season 1 and season 2, and there were it's still some kind of graphic novel or something. It's a whole universe that we'd love to keep expanding on. But it's really up to the fans. If fans can just stick with the show and give season 2 a chance, it only allows us the opportunity to further explore it in many certain forces. There's a reason everyone is coming to Hemlock Grove, and there's a much bigger picture at play as to why this town is becoming the vortex for all this particular type of energy. I mean, it's something, we want to lay the groundwork for a show that can go for many seasons and explore many, that loses its potency upon repeated viewings. If you watch a comedy, with horror, the very thing you go for is that scare. And that's the thing, once you know it's coming, it's never as strong the second time. So when you create a show, you have to make so much more than that. It can't be about the scare. It's got to be about the characters and the story, the intrigue, the universe, the world, and those great moments and those great lines and the things they do and the way they dress and the way, it's fantastic. We're laying the groundwork for a really, really rich universe that we want to explore in 200 different directions. But it's really up to the fans at this point if people continue. No, we love the fan reaction, but the fan reaction generally informs what that is the longest. He had these characters in his head for 8 years before the show, so now the fact that everyone else they're a part of that universe we created, he loves it.
Well, I had an amazing run as an actor and producer, and I was really hungry to direct again. And it was actually my Aftershock co-writer and director, Nicolas Lopez, who's like, okay, it's time, we need another movie. Mm-hmm. And I had about 60 pages of The Green Inferno written, and during the shooting of Aftershock in 2012, we finished the script with Guillermo Amoedo, and we started prepping it. I wanted to make a movie that looked and felt dangerous. I feel that movies have gotten too safe. I think that everything looks like it's in a studio or in a house. And look, Knock Knock is set in a house too. There's nothing wrong with that. But I feel like there's a dangerous type of filmmaking that's missing. I love the old 70s and 80s Italian cannibal movies, but even films like Apocalypse Now, the Werner Herzog films, Gary the Wrath of God, where you watch the movie and you say, whoever made this movie was absolutely insane. I wish Fitzgeraldo, I go, Herzog's completely out of his mind to make this film. And I wanted that kind of movie. I wanted a movie that 40 years from now, people look back and they go, I'm glad somebody made this, but this looks crazy. And it was that kind of a shoot. I mean, we shot in the Amazon, deeper than anyone had ever. Those are the people I want to see crash in the jungle and just get eaten. Because from the point of view of the villagers, they're just invaders. They just see them as people dressed in construction suits tearing up their land, and they've crashed in their backyard. They're going to punish them like invaders. So that's what's fun for me, is the clash of work. Whistle while you work. I mean, the village had to be a real functioning village, and we found this amazing village in Peru, and the whole village got in on the making the movie, and they loved it. It was so much fun. We had to conceptually explain to this village what a movie was. They're so cut off with no electricity. Many of them had never seen a television before, let alone a movie. Isolated, and the village does not have a boat. They have little canoes so they can go to the neighboring village, but that's about it. So, for these people, even though they had never seen a movie, they are storytellers. They got that we were telling a story, and everybody got into it. And that was the idea. We were cutting up the bodies. I just said, just make it like it's a kitchen, and you're salting, and they're singing their songs, and they're talking. And that's what makes it so sick, is that ultimately we are just pieces of meat. That we can be intelligent, thoughtful creatures, we can write, we can create, but ultimately, at the end of the day, we are worm food. Worms are just going to see us as meat and eat us. And that's a terrifying thought. I think that's what's so scary about sharks, is that a shark will eat you.
You know, that idea of being eaten is this primal fear that we have. And in a strange way, and I think that's why zombie movies are so successful. It's the fear of being eaten and turning to wanting something that eats. The truth is, if we could all just stomach cannibalism, we'd probably cure. Wow, that's great. It's kind of an oddly pro-vegetarian movie, even though I am a big steak eater. I couldn't help it. You know, you see the civilized meat eating in the restaurant where they're cutting the steak, and then, of course, they're in the jungle. And the sad truth is that eventually we all are basically food. We're going to be worm food no matter what, whether we like it. You know, it's interesting. The film's in a strange way about loss of control. And in Hostel, it's certainly about being completely powerless, thinking that you have power over another person, the way the kids pay for the prostitutes because they want power over them, and then they effectively become the prostitutes where someone's paying to do whatever they want to them. It just happens to be torture. You know, in The Green Inferno, I love the idea of these self-righteous kids that want to go and save the Amazon, but they don't really want to save the Amazon. That's not what they really care about. What they care about is being recognized for saving the Amazon. They want the credit. And if you notice, when they shut down the protests, they're all crying, they're all sad. But when they're trending on Twitter and CNN retweeted them, they're just want a cause. So more than that, more than the eating disorders, it was people that just wanted a cause, just because they felt they needed one. And that's like a very college thing to do. And it always stuck with me. Those girls, the image of those girls sitting there going, this is unfair, we're striking for the janitors. And then on the weekends, they go back to Greenwich, to their house. Oh man, I would try and charm them. I would tap dance. I'd be like, hey, I'm the entertainer. I would teach them how to whistle. I think like I could show them really good survival skills. But no, ultimately, I'd be, you know, I'd be done. Hopefully, I'd be too hairy to eat. Maybe they'd have to like burn me if they want to whack to be like, all right, that's like eating a bear, but they'd probably have to skin me. I wouldn't last 10 minutes with those cannibals. It was hard enough shooting.
I didn't know the meaning of preamble, so I rushed to the dictionary and read it. I didn't know I was involved in any such. One of the critics said, where was his hand in the scene? The more you cursed, it showed that you had no language ability, no sense of what we all have just so many words programmed into us. So I didn't speak much as a boy. The day before yesterday, I was in the Library of Congress and indulge in saying, I don't like the language used on television today. Yeah, but you turn on Turner Classic Films now, and you watch, and you see wonderful old movies. Dangerous. The language was not as... I Cary Grant yesterday in a thing called Monkey Business, and it was wonderful, a wonderful... Well, I don't know. I just like to excite people. I like people to share ideas. Well, I don't know. I just like to excite people. I like people to share ideas. Bill Moyers had a program which was wonderful called Exciting. Today I watched a lot of TV and everybody yells at one another. They scream at one another. Nobody listens to what the other person is saying, but they all plans out something, and you as the actor have to obey everything he wrote. We've spent years with Tennessee Williams. No, I think there are a lot of good playwrights today. But the theater has off-Broadway. But the United States is rich in tiny theaters all across the country. There's a regional theater where people can watch plays of oh yes. But some of the musicals were great in those days. I mean, Guys and Dolls is a great musical. Oklahoma, all of them. Well, there's a thing called encore, where they revive little pieces of great musicals of the past, because it always seems to be on the verge of dying, and yet it revives itself. Every once in a while, a great playwright comes along, and the theater has a new lean on life again, right? Then you had the theater with great Shakespeare films, radio, films, television, all of them, and they have not been able to put away The Fabulous Invalid. We don't make up the language. We obey. The actor is the one who brings back to life what the playwright has written. Orchestra player. So I bring to life what the writer has written and the director has created with the author. I am just carrying the best good actor I've ever known. And I said, what do you mean good? Why not great? Why not par for the course? Be a mother, a wife, have children, but the other part, the talent part, the actor, I would lie on the bed. I was in the Foreign Legion, and I was getting I'm going. And she'd walk out. And I knew then she'd lay out the food for me to eat, but that I was in my glory. Spent 2 years with Henry Fonda, Peter O'Toole, Al Pacino, making an indentation, making you aware of what life. I went to do my first film. When it was over, I rushed back to continue as an Okinawan. The stage manager said, there's somebody important out front. I said, please don't tell me that. I don't want to, it makes me nervous. But I came out and I bowed. Being an actor doesn't mean I'm a second-class citizen. I have to be a participant in the society. So I felt it was a society that protected the idea and the thoughts. Your hair stands up on the back of your neck when you read what he wrote. And all of it, when Strindberg, Ibsen, all of them are very, very generous in exploring the inner thoughts of what's to appear on a stage. And we're lucky to have had them. Keep thinking. Now you have Tennessee Williams, you have Arthur Miller. It reminds me of pointillism. You put art, and you step aside, step back, and there you have. It's always fun for me to indulge in that mysterious. As an Italian, did research on the Civil War. That was rarely done in American film. Clint Eastwood, bless him, began to do and analyze just what Leone did. The clothing they wore, the way they walked, the way they rode, all of that is a part of our history. I'm lucky to have shared in it. I spent 3.5 months in the jungles in Cambodia, in Angkor Wat. Part of the United States was preparing to go to the war in Vietnam, and I'm making movies based on a book by...
That the first imprint you make on film stays with you the rest of your film career. The first film I did was called Baby Doll, and I was rather sadistic. I don't think there's anything more violent than what's happening in the world today. You talk about films, let's talk about the attack in the subways, let's talk about Vietnam, let's talk about Angola, Beirut, you see. So that you can't blame the movies or television for... Don't know whether it's an exorcism, whether it's a catharsis by seeing violence in a movie. Some people try to emulate what's in a movie. A bomber may see something in a movie and decide he'll go bomb something, you see. So I think there should be less violence. There should be more...
Why doesn't Leone do that with me? A lot of times I was angry. Why didn't I just count? Leone do that with me? A lot of times I was angry. Why didn't I just count?
Conrad's Lord Jim. And each morning I'd go to have a bowl of soup with a Cambodian man who ran a little stand, a sort of Needix. And he used to smile at me. We spoke nothing together, you know, but he'd smile at me because I was... But I think making films used to be an expression, join the Navy and see the world. Yeah. It's now join the movies and you see. Yeah. No, but I have a feeling that there's some affinity. You know, if you think of, what's the word, where you're resurrected, where you come back as someone else. What is that word? Yes, yes. But, of course, the first formative years of feeling, and I wanted to channel it somehow. I didn't know. I used to lie on my bed and pretend it was the Sahara, and I was in the Foreign Legion, and I'd get shot in the arm. And my mother would come in and say, it's time to eat, and I'd say, I'm bleeding, you see. I was acting, constantly acting. Who realized fire torturing Peter O'Toole in the Cambodian jungle somewhere? And here it is, my dream. I thought, well, damn it, the play's just started. Why isn't he paying any attention? And this monologue goes on as you're doing the play. I say, well, maybe he doesn't like me. Then the other part of me says, the id part says, but he paid his money, he's got a perfect... And we didn't do what the Luntz did, who after a few years of marriage, or shortly after they married, made a pact and said, we will never appear separate. Toward the end of their lives, they began to appear separately. We've not had any rule of thumb. If some wonderful opportunity comes up for Anne in a film or a play, she's certainly welcome to do it. I mean, in the last few years, she did a play called Inquest. She played Ethel Rosenberg. She did that alone. She did Sticks and Bones on television recently for Joe Papp's theater, alone. I mean, with a cast, not with me. But if we find something that we love to do together, then we do. We found an old play by Hector MacArthur called 20th Century. It was done in 1931. We looked up the director, who was George Abbott, and we did it again in 1971. And that was a great fun for us. The actor has been worried about the economic aspects. You see, England, he becomes Sir Lawrence, a little red thing, and he's the Legion of Honor. In Russia, he's an honored artist of the Soviet Union. And I would say that the best thing that can happen in America, and more the big companies are finding it out, they're devoting certain of their funds into the arts. Because people must have more than just the for yeast for the mind. You see, a good play not only entertains and amuses you, yes, it does. I mean, there's nothing better or more cleansing than a good cry. In having had a diverse career and moved from media to media, loving to, as the farmer does, plow up his soil every few years, jump from a television show into a play, into a movie. In that way, you become movie. I was on the stage in Tea House of the August Moon playing an Oriental, and Kazan came to me and offered me a part in a movie called Baby Doll, written by Tennessee Williams. He's not only mastered the craft of acting, but also the art of caring.
Teacher of acting has developed their own method. They've excerpted what it came from. Originally, Stanislavski and Rush, who loved him. There was no pressure. There was no hysterics. It was a love.
The next performance, I didn't get the laugh, which taught me a valuable lesson, that you don't do it yourself. That's wonderful. It's great to find a thing like that and to use it. Some tell you when the critics are coming, and you do previews. You play for weeks, and that pulls the actor, the true actor, back to the theater all the time, because there's the only you'll open a door and say, "I will not." That's all. It'll take you half a day to shoot that. Although people get a lot more acclaim for movie work than they do for stage work, but the most satisfying for me is doing it on stage. I was the crew chief on an airplane. It all took place on an airplane, and all the plane crashes, and all the men go back. They're dead, and they return home. A cheerful subject for just 1946. And the play lasted a week. I didn't think I would last either, because my voice wasn't loud enough together. And Kazan had directed The Skin of Our Teeth and wasn't happy with his direction of fantasy. So he picked a little scene from a one-act play of Williams called 10 Blocks on the Camino Real. And he wanted to just work on it as a director. And I was playing in Mr. Roberts. At night, after the show was over, 11:15, we'd meet at the Actors Studio, and we'd work till 1 o'clock in the morning, and he'd direct it. Then he showed it to Tennessee, and Tennessee was absolutely astounded at what Kazan had found in a fantasy sense with his scene. So he said, incidentally, they're going to do my play, The Rose Tattoo, and he should play Mangiacavallo. So that's how I got to play The Rose Tattoo. A performance can change the message of a play. The play dealt with a man, me, who resists becoming a rhinoceros, who resists the current, who stands up and defies people. You know, he doesn't turn on, never to question or doubt her selection of whatever it is, what colors she wants. It was, you remember there used to be the flapper girls, when tapestry of work. I was playing an Oriental the following year, or a few years before that in Tea House. 4 nights before Pal Joey had opened, and they booed the poor actor dancer, who was superb in the part. So I came out to take my curtain call, thinking, if you boo, I'm going to boo right back. I was terrified, and they didn't boo. But the reason they liked that play so much, it was the first time Americans didn't take themselves quite so seriously and didn't think they were going to inform the world of their brilliance.
It's just an annoyance at this point. We are obsessed, I'm not kidding. Like, we left our Mad Men premiere to go play.
To be the best person that she can be, and she might fail at it, but she'll continue to grow. I think she will continue to be flawed. But we know what happened to those women in private life, and whether or not she ever really gets a handle on that, or whether she winds up with, you know, for people, especially for people that have been loyal and sort of watched all of the season, but also satisfactory in a way of finally getting to delve into these. I have actually. Part of the reason is I don't remember anything. So I didn't remember what happened in the first episode till I saw it. I couldn't tell you what happens in the second one. So I'm very good for spoilers because I just don't remember what happens. I've been asked recently what my favorite episodes of the show are, and we had to like go online and look at all the seasons because I couldn't remember what happened when. So I'm just bad at it. So it's not really even any, I'm not like some like expert at it, I just don't remember. So I'm good for spoilers. That episode sort of surpassed, I think, what television can do or has done. You know, it sort of set a standard that I certainly cannot take sole credit for. I mean, it's a brilliant script. Else, I do feel like, you know, Mad Men isn't even dead and buried yet. Very much not up to me, but I'm not one to look a gift horse in the mouth, so, you know, we never know. But I think I'll pause just a second and let people enjoy Mad Men before.
She's come a long way, obviously. I don't think her journey is over by any means. Few seasons, the first 3 seasons were all about, especially the second season, it was a big arc, was all about her figuring out, you know, what it meant to be this woman in a man's world, and did she have to be like Don, or did she have to be a man, or did she, you know, did she have to play up her sexuality, or who she is and how she can just be herself, and she doesn't have to be either one, but she should just be herself. And I think the idea of the differences and similarities between then and now is one of the most intriguing things about the show for the audience, and you know, just playing that game of comparison. And it's definitely sparked a lot of discussions and questions, and I've been a part of it. When you first start watching the show, and you know, there's that first funny thing of like, oh wow, my God, look at that, that's so different. We don't episodes start to see things that you see here now, and things that either you've experienced or seen someone do or done yourself, and you start to sort of get uncomfortably similar to those characters. And I think that that's what has sustained the show past the original sort of gimmick of it being in that time period, is that these human beings, and they're people, just really, they're still like us and we're still like them. And I think that's something that's become far more interesting than just it being in 19.
I've realized what we're missing, what we need though, is more monsters with self as an individual. That's a good way of putting it, as like a better version, a better you, not necessarily changing who you are.
Yeah, and the truth of what happened, you know, and the truth of what happened behind it. Did all our research for us. Mary and Dan and her team. It's very detailed, and it has a lot of information that obviously isn't necessary to kind of put in the film. But for me and for everyone else, was really helpful to have that context, and then to even just do the scenes over and over when you're constantly sort of remnants that they used, and you know, they're real, and there's George Bush's name, and you know, signatures and of people and generals from that time that I never would have known otherwise. Into that part of it, I think she did know that she obviously has played a couple of extremely well-known real life people, and she was talking about it, and I was like very interested in what she was saying, because I might be doing that, and I'm so good at it. Yeah. But you don't feel like she's impersonating anybody. You feel like she's is so uncanny. In Toronto, Bob wasn't there, but Dan was, and I found after watching the film, they both have this sort of heroic, legendary quality. You know, they both have that. So even though they don't necessarily, somehow it's you really can replace Bob with Dan. And with them, I'm actually on their side. I think that I think that Mary was right, and what they did, the story that she investigated and told on 60 Minutes was facts of the story that she investigated. And I think that that's, I wanted her to kind of have that sort of reality to her. Besides that, the first time he cried, and when we saw it in Toronto, he was very emotional afterwards. I mean, I can't imagine what that's like, to have sort of this story told that is a very important time, and to have Robert Redford telling it, you know what I mean? To have somebody who's so brilliant doing it so well. He's somebody who is a seeker of truth, and he's somebody who is really...
23-year-old actress in New York, I was like, this is amazing. Please let me play this part. And I loved her, and I loved the character, and then it just grew from there. And you know, the script is obviously what attracted all of us originally, and then when we all got involved, you know, you started to meet the cast, and the cast was awesome, and the producers were awesome, the secretary, and that didn't work out, and maybe she's supposed to be like Don, maybe she's supposed to be a man, maybe she's supposed to cut herself off from being a woman. And
And I think that's, over the past 3 seasons, that was her sort of arc. And in the 4th season, I really feel like she hasn't yet, but I really feel like she's starting to become the person that and she's starting to become herself and not feel like she has to be something that she has seen, or someone that in the office, or someone, that she's followed. They make mistakes and they do bad things, but they're not bad people. And that's very true to life, and that's very true to human. Their jobs are selling happiness every day to the public, and that against their own struggle for their own personal happiness is very interesting. So I don't consider any of the characters bad people. They do very bad.
I was really happy with it. I mean, I was very happy with my storyline. She's had a rough road as far as relationships go, a lot of bad decisions and a lot of hungover mornings. And I was happy that she got the most romantic scene on this huge theater with like thousands of people in LA. I think they like live streamed it or whatever it's called, and so we watched it with like a bunch of people. A lot of fans were there. The show, Matt always made sure that the other actor on the other end of the phone was always there, so you had to come and do your other side of the phone call off camera for the person. It was like a rule. That particular one was different because he was in Big Sur, so they didn't want to bring me out there, and I sort of insisted that they get me on the phone for it because it was like our last scene. I was like, I have to be on the other end of the phone. So they actually turned the payphone into a phone so that he could actually call me. And it was super early in the morning, so I was like in bed, obviously. And I was like in my pajamas, like with coffee and like my cats, like on the with John, like playing Don. He's like crying, and I'm like trying to get the cats to be quiet. So it was really heavy. And then the painting was kind of awkward and kind of large. And they wanted me to hold it so that you could see it in certain shots. And then the cigarette is actually trying to look cool, like trying not to drop the painting, trying not to like bump into the walls. And then they were like, what do you want to listen to? And I was like, Staying Alive. I really valued it, and it was really special for us because we're both like big fans of each other personally and professionally. And so we always really loved when we got to do stuff. So I loved that in the last few episodes, I got like some huge slattery.
The time period is so enticing, and it's so beautiful to watch, and there's obviously just the time period of the 60s and advertising is so enigmatic, and it's I mean, obviously, as an actor, you do bring elements of yourself to a character. That's what you have to go on. At the same time, she's very different. She's much more, I think, naive than I am, less life experience. So she's very different, but at the same time, it's a big question. I think that, that's a question that's been asked many times over the past 5 years. There are similarities and differences, and things that have improved and things that have not improved. And obviously, we've come a long way in many ways that has been very beneficial to women. And I think that we've lost things in other ways. That sense of mystery about women, the way that they dressed, that's sort of gone. And lucky to play it. And then, as far as how, we both try to be good people. I think that she's a relatively honest person, and she tries to do the right. And the secrets that they already know about each other are, favorite commercial. I love Apple ads. I think Apple's pretty great. They've always is very different from now. It's a world that I never thought I would have anything to do with, and now I do. It's just kind of, yeah, absolutely. The thing is, you're in people's homes, and it's funny when people come up to me, I find that they'll say that to me. They say you, and I understand. You're in their home every week, and perfect kind of moment where this pilot came along, and I was in New York at the time. I was cast out of New York, and everybody was buzzing about this show, Mad Men, and then this other show, and I said, I want to work with that man, and I met Matt. I just was like, I want to work with him. You could see that in his face, and you could see that in his eyes, even just in the audition. And I loved the role, and I felt like what I did with the role in that audition, who Peggy was in that audition, was the same person that he wrote. So it just felt like we really clicked. She's never been in the big city, and now she's 30, and she's been working in a man's world for a few years. And I think that, for me, the best way to describe her is just that journey that everybody goes, 20 to 30. She grows up, and she becomes harder in a lot of ways. She gets her heart broken. She cross or not, but I hope that she still retains that sense of honesty and sort of positivity and truth that I think that, she's very honest. She just is very much believes in whatever she's, and I think that she still has that, despite the fact that she's like had some fun having to go from that frumpy story through these clothes, which is what Janie does and what any good costume designer does, makes my job so much easier. And plaid with polka dots and like turtlenecks and then I haven't gotten to wear so much of them, but like pants with a vest with the character and through the clothes has been, it makes my job so much easier. And he put it in and they played the song every time we did it. And it was a very special kind of moment. If he'd seen us doing it, like we used to just slow dance in the middle of the office for no reason, just like bored, And since season 1, and I asked Matt if he'd seen us do it and he said no. So it was a weird it was just a weird coincidence and, made the scripts come first, nothing else. It is the story that comes first. And that's why we're still here. That's why people still.
Everyone is so nice, and Tom and Luke I sort of worked with the most, and they couldn't be nicer gentlemen, honestly. We had like one of the funniest people I know. He's hilarious. So basically in between takes I just was like giggling at everything. We filmed in Belfast, which was really cool because I've never been to Ireland. So it was really, really awesome. I loved Ireland, honestly. It's such a well-respected festival that has such a range of films, from small films to bigger, big blockbuster films. And I think that, there's sort of a cachet and a respect that comes with the festival. So it's an honor in a way, that a few festivals are, but I feel like people have a lot of respect for tourism.
And I just find that fascinating. So I go in, I kind of make up careers or like stories to tell the Uber driver, so I totally just like lied to them. And I got in the Uber like the other day, and the guy was, who's talking about his kids and like his marital problems, and he's like, oh, well, you have kids, don't you? And I was like, yeah, I have 2 kids, I have a boy. I'm a sophomore this year, so and I went my freshman year, which was like really, she comes with me, the same lady, and yeah, when I'm filming, and we have to do all the work and all the tests and everything and send it back the day that it's due for everyone else.
Wow.
Right. Yeah, so it's like you have to keep up, because then when you come home from, your movie, if you don't keep up, you're like lost. Starting out, when I was little, like I had like the best teachers for science, so they kind of made me like it more. But now I'm doing chemistry this year, and then I have physics next year, which I hope I still like it after that. I would say that, he always has been kind of like my celebrity crush. The box trolls. Well, the box trolls, they are little creatures that live. Myself doesn't really matter. It's all about the way I sound. So I had to remember that and like get used to and comfortable that, it doesn't matter about the emotion in your eyes. You have to portray the emotion that would be in your eyes and your voice. So you have to just get those layers into the way you talk, which at first I was like, wow, it was amazing. Because I obviously wasn't, I did visit Portland, Oregon, where there was Lee, like to say that I'm like in a movie with him, but then maybe like dissatisfying that like I didn't get to, I did get to meet him at Comic-Con, because when we went, so I met him then. He doesn't sound anything like Snap. We did a session together, and with Isaac, we did a session together, which was nice, because, it was also kind of like you want other actors there to like try. When we did the scene about talking about the fathers, me and Isaac did that, because that's kind of more of like an emotional, not an action. You have to see the box trolls because it's extremely clever and it's unlike anything you've seen before. Well, obviously these little guys are definitely judged by kind of their name and the way they look. They're very scared, and in order for them to show people who they truly are, they have to overcome their fear and they have to stop being terrified. Is an orphan in a way, so he's trying to figure out, what is a family, what is it supposed to be, and we have a good talk about kind of that, a father's always supposed to be there for you no matter what. It's also in a Fish, who's one of the box trolls, is like Egg's father. Even though, he doesn't really fit, you wouldn't think of him as a father because he's a little box troll, he doesn't really fit the norm, but he treats Eggs like a fatherly figure. So even though they're not related, he still treats him that way, and so he's like, well, it's all handmade. So when you watch it, and I feel like you can see the heart, like, and you can just tell that like fingers molded all of this, and it's something. I mean, you obviously don't see them doing it, but you can tell. It sets it apart. Then it's not just from a computer. It's made from. Without reading the script or anything, I went in and I met with Rob, Linda, and Joe. From that first meeting, they told me about the story and world, a Disney princess, and from that meeting we got along so well, and they were so nice. Then they gave me the script after that meeting, and I went home and read it right away. It's the classic story of Sleeping Beauty plus so much more information, so you get to know why things happen and why Maleficent becomes so evil, and sort of the steps that it takes because people aren't just evil just because there has to be a cause, and in our film you get to see sort of what that cause is, sort of bring the essence of her. And I know, like, when you see pictures of her, sort of the way she stands with her hands, and I was just sort of taking it all in. Before we started filming this movie, I watched the anime movie again just to sort of see if I could pick up on any little mannerisms that she did, sort of in the forest, and sort of brought those little princess elements. But also wanting to make have those elements, but also make her a real person, not just an animated character. So the pixies, and they're my aunts as well. So, and when you get to see them big, they're tiny, and then when they become the human form, when they have to take care of baby Aurora, they grow, they have to be like peasant women, which I don't think they enjoy very much. They like their wings and their funny costumes, and with the horns, and so the intensity and all that. And we definitely have that. Maleficent's bird, sort of her pet bird, and in our film we get to see him as a man as well, because she turns him into a man. And that and when I'm little, I play with the bird. I do see the bird I pet, and I have a pretty bird is what I call him. And then when I get older, I get to see him to see his character from when he's young, and sort of it's a journey for him as much as it is for Maleficent in a way. So you get to sort of see why he becomes so evil and why she becomes so evil. So they both have a reason. That Christie scenes. After that, Maleficent sort of follows Aurora around while Aurora's growing up. So you get to see me sort of in different stages as young, a toddler, and then sort of 8 years old, and then you finally see me sort of as a teenager. And Maleficent is sort of there, hiding away in every step of those. I'm not, but yeah, she's 5'4", and I'm about 5'6.5", 5'6". Tomorrow, which is very scary for me to think about as well. And I think that one person, because they've grown up together their whole lives, spent every day with one. I think for me it was all the different emotions that Ginger gets to go through, and I thought it would be completely perfect. I mean, after reading the script is perfect, and Sally. They're completely different, because mine was in the 60s and then hers was more modern and in a different area, so they're completely different. She did the accent, something different. I'd never done an accent before. I was definitely a little nervous about it just because it's something new, but before we started shooting, the dialect coach, Sally, didn't want Sandra on set because she wanted us to think more about the scenes and the characters, and have the dialect sort of be already there, and one less thing to worry about, which it was nice to have it sort of. I think that it was so exciting to see so many different types of people in one film, just totally different personalities, but they all sort of they work together. This is different, and I like Nick. I had admired him and his, because when you see a Nick Refn film, it's so, you're like, that's his movie, which is so, I think, a very special quality to have your stamp on your work. And I wanted to kind of be in his world, but then you think, oh, but when is he ever going to do a movie, that stars a teenage girl in it? Like, that's never going to happen. Nick Refn with a teenage girl, no. And then you hear, wait, he's doing that, and it's set in the fashion industry. If it's about a model, it's like, whoa. Okay. And so once you hear that, I'm like, oh, I hope I get to do that. And then he wanted to meet with me, and the story of it and what it really was about these beauty obsessed women, and I was so all in. So well, the way that Nick works was very different from how I had worked before. It was extremely close, and we were going off instincts the whole time. We would change things along the way, and he allowed me. I never felt this much freedom on a set. He allowed me to put my views, or even as being a teenager myself, I was 16, my character was 16, so there'd be a lot of things where I'd be like, Nick, she would never say this, or she would never wear this. Freedom. It was a strange but amazing feeling to work that way. Say this, or she would never wear this, and he's like, okay, we'll change it. So yeah, I never felt that freedom. It was a strange but amazing feeling to work that way. And we filmed in sequence in chronological order, so that was very helpful, because she does, I related kind of. One thing was that she's from a small town and moves to a big city, and we made her from Georgia, which is where I'm from, and moved to LA. So I understood seeing a big city and in fresh eyes, and also being the youngest person around, because I started acting when I was young, so I know how it feels to be kind of just one that maybe doesn't, hasn't been in the industry for as long as everybody else. So I definitely knew that feeling, and the thing that I enjoyed was kind of making the darker parts of her. I thought it was, we kind of described her as being Dorothy in Oz, but if Dorothy was evil, because she's not. I love that she's not the victim in the film. She is not the victim. It was fun to play with that and actually kind of twist the audience, be like, oh, I thought that she was. So the pronouns, he, him, so we wanted to talk about that, but it's nice that our film, I think our film's unique in that way, where they've been living with him for a very long time now, but then it starts where, boom, he wants to take the next step and get the testosterone, and I'm not playing a female, so that was interesting to feel a lot of female energy, but I wasn't contributing to that.
New York, but she'll come home to LA, and we spend it together and decorate. And then every year I give everyone an ornament in my family, so I have like a special tree, accurate and beautiful. And even the costumes, I got to wear some really beautiful costumes, and our costume designer, down to like the underwear and socks, all from Chris Cooper's in the movie. He's my father, and he's the chief of police in Florida. And you kind of see her start when she's younger, and then she wants to go to Hollywood to become a star, but she doesn't quite make it there and falls into kind of a dark place, and comes back and is born again and becomes an evangelist preacher during the Prohibition. And so she's speaking against alcohol and drugs and gambling, which is bad for. He's in the scene with you, you don't feel like he's critiquing you or directing you.
Do we need, where is my character going? And it kind of just relied on instincts. And in the mornings I would show up and he'd be like, so what are you feeling today? Like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, God, like, he made her to come from like a small town, go to a big city, which is what I look skinnier or make, it's like crazy. So people are just looking at this false image that's not perfect. So then they see a real human being, they're like, oh, you're not perfect. It's like what you're looking at is fake. So it's kind of Ben Affleck's gonna, here's a script that he's gonna direct and that he wrote, and he's gonna star in. You're like, all right, yes, like whatever. Great. But of course, I read the script, and really, the way that it's written, the action sequence kind of playing out, and it's so many different things going on and time periods, and obviously Loretta, she really, stuck out to me, and after reading, I really was like, I hope I get the part, So I had to meet with Ben, but yeah, it was really great script. So well, and how to kind of create the best environment to facilitate your best performance, and to want to just let everyone be creative, and he's just so kind of giving in that way, and then as a director, I can't believe, like, his organization in his mind, to have to switch, but when he is, my first day on set, my first scene was the scene with, I don't know, but with and it was like, it's a very intense scene after I've like come back from Hollywood, and because I think for a while she didn't really get to face her demons like she should have, because she was very busy kind of up in the clouds saying these words that she kind of, I think, believed in the beginning, but started to trail off, and so she didn't really get to face all those like she should have. Maybe it would have worked out better.
Yeah,
There's a woman, Amy Semple McPherson, which you kind of can tell. We based a lot of kind of Loretta's look off of her white and the big jeweled crosses and things. And there was there was YouTube videos that I had watched. Actually, I was like, this amazing video of her.
We get the senior patio, which is a huge deal because if you're not a senior, you're not allowed to be on it as an underclassman.
Oh.
So now we can like kick off all the freshmen and kick off all the juniors, be like gasoline on all the doors and zip tied all the lockers shut and stole all